Good afternoon, everyone, and we will call the quarterly meeting of the Tennessee Board of Regents to order. As you guys know, this is our afternoon for committee meetings, so we have a full afternoon ahead. I will be brief, however, in opening to say thank you to Chattanooga State Community College and our TCAT Chattanooga. You ordered up a beautiful day on this incredibly beautiful campus, and not only, and this is no pun intended since it is warming up outside, but we did receive a very warm welcome, most especially from our student ambassadors. It's the reason we love being back on our campus, is to see our students in action, and they certainly made a great impression today, and we look forward to being with them on and off here over the course of these next 2 days. I want to officially welcome Regent Vanessa Pilkington to our midst. Her first in-person board meeting. She was with us on May 31 for our committee chairs meeting. Vanessa is our new faculty regent. And as you guys recall, she joins us from the TCAT at Dixon, where she is a senior dental assisting instructor. And best of all, too, she is one of our graduates as well. So Vanessa is a non-voting faculty regent for the next, 15 days. And as of July 1st, then assumes the role as a voting faculty regent. So welcome again. It's good to see you. And Sam Piercy, has Commissioner Piercy made it yet? No. Not yet. We will introduce our interim commissioner of education, who's joining us today as well, as he makes his way into the building. Chancellor, before we start committee meetings, is there anything you would like to say?
Well, just to reiterate and to thank my first family of Tennessee for welcoming us back to you today to be on your campus. It is absolutely gorgeous and always a pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you for getting ready for us. I had the opportunity to get ready for a board meeting after I'd been here just a few months, so I know what pain you're going through, and I know how happy you'll be tomorrow afternoon when we all leave. But thank you for everything you've done. We look forward to spending the next 2 days with you.
Thank you very much. And I thought driving in today, how does it feel to you when you come back to this campus from time to time?
Well, I told several people today that I teared up when I pulled back on, so.
She's noticed new carpet, new flooring, that eye for detail. She remembers every little detail from those years. So, thank you all. With that, Regent Varlin, are you ready to call external affairs to order?
That's right. We're going to kick off this meeting with external affairs, and I'm going to call on our Secretary Perry to call the roll, please.
Thank you. Regent Apple, Regent Powers.
Here.
Regent Spurgeon, Chair Lady Varlin.
Here.
And Regent Wamp. Madam Chair, you have a quorum and your committee is assembled.
Yeah.
He'll be joining us very shortly.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We have a quorum, I hope. All right. We will proceed. I'm going to call on Executive Vice Chancellor for External Affairs, Dr. Kim McCormick, to introduce Assistant and Associate Vice Chancellors with our reports.
Well, good morning, everyone. Chair Varlin, Chancellor, Vice Chair Reynolds, all the members of the board, and everyone in the audience. I must also say that I very much miss Chattanooga as well, in Chattanooga State. Lots of friends out here in the audience. And yes, I am going to be introducing our vice chancellors, assistant vice chancellors for government relations and marketing. But first, I want to tell you or give you an update on something absolutely wonderful, a donation that we are receiving from Volkswagen Group of America. This is the home of Volkswagen, as we all know. Excuse me. We are receiving 24 vehicles worth around $750,000 from Volkswagen. Yes, we are. It is so wonderful. Chris Perkins, are you in the audience? Okay, can you come up for just a minute? I know this is unannounced, but I want him to tell you about this. Sorry, Chris.
Thank you, everybody. I feel like I just won on The Price is Right, so I'm like, pretty Pretty excited. This has been a collaboration with the Collision Repair Education Foundation and Volkswagen. They came to Chattanooga State and talked to them and their instructor of automotive at TCAT Chattanooga about a donation. So they ran 12 vehicles through the Chattanooga State Foundation and were able to run 12 through our foundation that have gone to TCAT Knoxville, TCAT Morristown, TCAT Crossville, and TCAT Livingston. And so we have 12 vehicles, they have 12 vehicles, and the 12 vehicles that we have are, I believe, 8 went to President Whiteman, and then 2 went to Knoxville, Morristown, and Livingston. So we were just thrilled to have it, and they're really excited. The heartburn that they told us they have is they don't have the ability to have one college take 20 to 30 cars. So Chloe Schaefer just starts jumping up and down from legal affairs when we're on the call with them, and says, well, you know, we have 27 TCATs across the state of Tennessee. And so now they're looking to do something next year in Middle or West Tennessee, and then do something like that again in the other region of the state, and then to continue that relationship. So thank you.
Thank you, President, to put you on the spot. And that event, there is going to be an event here on June 29th at Chattanooga State. So, and we had one yesterday in Knoxville. We had lots of legislators show up. Lieutenant Governor McNally was there. So it was a wonderful event. And to see those students, it was just absolutely amazing. They were there working with these, looking at these vehicles in awe, and they were damaged in transit, I guess is what we need to say, but they are slightly damaged. So these are, and some of them are electric and some of them are actually, you know, regular vehicles, but students are going to be able to work on equipment that is up to date, and it's what we need for our students. So with that said, I'm sorry to interrupt with something unannounced, but I did want to get that out. So I will yield now. If you would like to call up, please, at first, the Assistant Vice Chancellor John Williams for Government Relations, and then Associate Vice Chancellor Matthew Gann for a marketing update.
Thank you, Dr. McCormick, and good afternoon, Madam Chair, Chancellor Tidings, and members of the board. As you know, the legislature adjourned the first session of the 113th General Assembly on Friday, April the 21st. Throughout the course of session, the Government Relations Department tracked more than 600 bills. I think there were around 1,500 filed, and 600 of those we followed throughout session. Of the 600, 157 of those were ultimately signed into law. I wanted to thank members of the Government Relations team that had helped us out this session, Patrick Boggs and Lawrence Wheaton down here for tracking bills, watching committees, kind of being in the hustle and bustle all throughout sessions. We couldn't have done it without everybody's work this session. But I wanted to walk through a handful of bills that I thought were notable to give you an update on where they ended up throughout the session. So first up is Senate Bill 89, House Bill 29 by Senator Hensley and Representative Scott Sapicki. It allows a public university to offer remedial or developmental coursework, and it takes effect on July the 1st. Senate Bill 102, House Bill 158, prohibits public colleges and universities from requiring faculty members or employees to complete or participate in implicit bias training. And it also prohibits an institution from taking adverse employment actions against an employee who refuses to participate in implicit bias training. And this took effect on May the 17th of this year. Senate Bill 103, House Bill 611 by Senator Gardenhire and Representative Hawk creates a Class A misdemeanor if a state employee knowingly or intentionally violates the State Nepotism Act and then willfully fails or refuses to remove or remedy the violation. And that takes effect on July 1st. Senate Bill 301, House Bill 961, allows adjunct faculty to enroll in one course consisting of no more than 4 credit hours or 120 clock hours per term at the community college or TCAT where they're employed without paying tuition and fees. And that also takes effect on July 1st. Senate Bill 350, House Bill 294 requires public colleges and universities to include contact information for certain crisis and suicide prevention lifelines on student ID cards. purchased after July 1st of this year and requires certain mental health resources and information to be included on the institution's website. And that takes effect on July 1st. Senate Bill 834, House Bill 1445, prohibits a public college or university from allowing an individual to use a social media platform if the if the platform uses is hosted or operated by a company based in China. We call it the TikTok bill. It's TikTok and WeChat are a couple of the social media platforms that are impacted by that, and it took effect upon becoming a law. Senate Bill 515, House Bill 723 expands the employees allowed to carry a handgun on property owned, operated, or controlled by a public institution of higher education to include retired law enforcement officers who retired in good standing with 20 years of service and are now employed part-time by a college. And that takes effect on July 1st. And Senate Bill 317, House Bill 269, changes the designation of June 19th, known as Juneteenth. Currently, it's a special day of observance, but it's changing to a legal state holiday, so a day off for state employees. It took effect on May the 5th. And when we talked about previously, Senate Bill 817, House Bill 1376, enacts the Tennessee Higher Education Freedom and Transparency Act, which adds to last year's divisive concepts legislation. So I'll go through a couple of the points that this enacts. It authorizes a student or employee of a public institution of higher education to file a report of an alleged violation of the divisive concept statute. It requires an institution to investigate a report of a violation of the statute and take appropriate steps to remediate that violation. Requires each institution to report violations and any corrective action plans to the comptroller. Prohibits an institution's use of state funds, fees, dues, subscriptions, or travel in conjunction with membership, meetings, or activities of an organization requiring an individual to endorse or promote a divisive concept. Requires institutions to notify students and employees of restrictions and the definitions of the divisive concepts which are already in law. Prohibits an institution from approving or scheduling uses of its property in a manner that shows bias or favoritism against, for or against a group of students. Prohibits an institution from requiring a student group to pay fees or deposits that are not charged to all other student groups. Prohibits an institution from requiring an applicant for employment or admission to submit a personal diversity statement. And for employees whose primary job title includes DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, the college must ensure that duties include supporting academic achievement, workforce readiness, or other learning supports that are applicable to all students. And this takes effect on July 1st. General Counsel Labs and Vice Chancellor Thompson have been working on the implementation plan, and we'll have the processes in place by July 1st to fully implement the act. Then I'll go through a couple of other bills that didn't make it quite across the finish line that I wanted to let you know about. Senate Bill 404, House Bill 391 would have directed TBR to develop and administer a 2-year pilot program to provide financial assistance for students enrolled in non-degree workforce credential type programs. It got through the education committees but didn't get funded in the budget, so we're hoping we'll see this move again next year. Senate Bill 364, House Bill 348, as amended, would have allowed high school graduates to delay their college enrollment up to 16 months if they were working full-time, so giving a little bit of flexibility to Tennessee Promise students. It also passed through committee but didn't get funded in the budget in the end. Senate Bill 842, House Bill 1075 would have expanded eligibility for the dual enrollment grant, so allowing sophomores in college to get the dual enrollment grant at a community college. And finally, Senate Bill 918, House Bill 1319, requires the U.S. flag and the Tennessee state flag to be displayed continuously on property owned, operated, or controlled by the state, and restricts the display of other flags on state property under certain circumstances. It passed the House, but was deferred in the Senate to 2024, so it may come back next year. So those are a few pieces of legislation that didn't move forward this year. We've placed copies of the full legislative compilation on your desk so you can see everything that we tracked that did end up passing, and we'll also post it online so you can check it out there along with previous years' copies of the compilation. And the governor has announced that he plans to call a special session in August to take up bills related to public safety, and we'll keep you up to date as we learn more about that special session and what that might entail. So that includes my remarks, and happy to take questions, and if not, I'll turn it back over to Dr. McCormick.
Anybody have a question? John, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, who are we having up? There he is, Mr. Marketing.
Behind the curtain. Members of the committee, before we dive into the agenda, I would like to take a moment again to congratulate my team at the Board of Regents for taking home 6 gold awards at the Tennessee College Public Relations Associating meeting. That's more gold awards than any other college, university, or system in the state of Tennessee. And these awards range from design. They range from design and publications to our campaigns and toolkits that we provide to our colleges, and even a bus wrap, go TCAT Crossville, and a website, which you'll see here in a little bit. This is an impressive accomplishment for my team and a testament to their dedication, creativity, and hard work. And additionally, the team won a gold award in design at the National Council for Marketing and Public Relations earlier this spring. As the FDR said once, I'm not the smartest fellow in the world, but I can sure pick smart colleagues. And so I wanted to, again, point out an amazing team that works for the system office and all of our colleges for the students in our system. So for those new to the board, I would like to take a moment to discuss our department's mandate, which serves as the foundation for our strategic objectives and the guiding principles behind our work. And then I'll get into some cool stuff. So we act as the agency of record for the system, and we work to champion the concept of community colleges throughout the state and the TCATs, highlighting the invaluable opportunities they offer in terms of workforce development and knowledge transfer. By enhancing the perception and reputation of the community and technical colleges, we aim to create a robust pipeline for talent and innovation that works for both students and their families, as well as business and industry and the state's economy. We also provide comprehensive strategy, communications, and policy assistance to our colleges and other system offices in ensuring they are well equipped to navigate the challenges of today's rapidly evolving higher education landscape. And our commitment to fulfilling this mandate is deeply rooted in adopting an omni-channel approach. And this strategy places our diverse range of stakeholders at the heart of our work, ensuring that we cater to the unique needs and expectations of each. This approach extends to our various stakeholders, including students, business and industry, elected officials, and internal audiences such as faculty and staff. And in doing so, we are able to provide tailored solutions and experiences that resonate with each group and contribute to the overall success of our students and our system and colleges. So at the core of this strategic approach lies a strong emphasis on harnessing our systems and colleges' USP, which is the unique selling proposition. And the defining aspect of our college's USP are flexibility, affordability, and as others will elaborate a little later today and tomorrow, the capacity to expand rapidly. And by centering our efforts around these key attributes, we can effectively communicate our value proposition, attract and retain students, and continue to make a meaningful impact on the communities that we serve every day. And speaking of that, I'm going to highlight 2 partnerships that we have at the statewide and system level, which is the TSSAA and their championship series, and Tennessee Chamber of Commerce Be Proud, Be Proud program. So our collaboration with the TSSAA began a few years ago, and since then we've continued to strengthen and expand this partnership. Last year, we took a significant step forward by extending our involvement to include all sports in their championship series. This broadened partnerships allow us to engage with a larger audience of student athletes, coaches, parents, and showcasing our college's unique advantages and opportunities. And our expanded partnership includes both fall and winter sports, starting with the Blue Cross Bowl that's here in Chattanooga and ending with the Spring Fling. And TSSAA promotes both TBR as a system and the idea that careers start at community and technical colleges. And the TSSAA has proven to be highly beneficial in terms of promoting our colleges to a diverse audiences of student athletes, parents, coaches, and school administrators. And the TSSAA actively showcases our institutions throughout the year via various communication channels. And this year, we directly reached 14,000 student athletes, almost 200,000 fans, and 750,000 visitors to the TSSAA website where our logo and ads are displayed. And we look forward to continuing this partnership in the future and to enhance the further value and opportunity of the state's community and technical colleges to high school students and their influencers. Any questions about that partnership? It's exciting, and to be straight in front of students, their families, influencers, guidance counselors, and principals. I think it's important for the work we do.
Hey, Matthew, you said you
Yes.
expanded it to all the sports.
Yes.
So that means not just in Chattanooga at the Blue Cross Bowl, it's wherever the championships are
We're
held.
statewide. The Spring Fling, we do golf. We had a huge presence in even bowling. And it's not just the championships that TSSAA highlights, but we're in their monthly newsletters. We're all over their social media. It's a pretty strong partnership that gathers quite a bit of influence about the state. Any other questions? So we'll move on to an exciting new partnership with the Tennessee Chamber of Commerce. Launching this September in Tennessee, the Be Pro, Be Proud seeks to create a movement to bring a new generation of pride to technical education by promoting the connection of skills to in-demand careers throughout the state. Be Pro, Be Proud is a multi-state initiative to enhance workforce development initiatives and skills-based training for middle and high school students. And the best way to demonstrate that is a short little video with some aggressive music, so I warn you ahead of time. So a key component of the Be Pro, Be Proud initiative is the implementation of a mobile workshop, which was just demonstrated. And it showcases the diverse career and technical programs available at both our community and technical colleges throughout the state. The interactive platform engages students and raises awareness about the potential pathways to a lot of rewarding careers. The Be Pro, Be Proud workshop is designed to collect valuable student data, which is subsequently be integrated into our customer relationship management system, CRM, which you've heard Heidi talk about multiple times. And this streamlined process enhances our understanding of prospective students' interests and needs and enables our institutions to initiate recruiting efforts early, ultimately increasing our chance of attracting students to those CTE fields. So even though this initiative launches in September based on other states, they're planning, the Tennessee Chamber of Commerce is planning to have 40,000 direct student interactions yearly. 4 out of 5 students report better impressions of technical careers after engaging with the mobile workshop, and 73% of educators report that students will consider a CTE path after visiting the workshop. Additionally, I'd like to thank Michael Tinsley and the Perkins 5 grant for partnering with us in this partnership. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions about the Be Pro, Be Proud initiative.
Matt, when you say the Chamber of Commerce, are you talking about the state chamber, or are you talking about a collection of the individual cities?
The Tennessee Chamber of Commerce is the state.
Okay, so, yeah.
Yes,
Okay, yeah. So you're talking Bradley Jackson. and
it's
that.
Bradley Jackson
Okay,
Senior.
thanks.
They'll also work with the local chambers. They're working
Yeah.
with us, as a matter of fact, so.
There is a large list of industry partners in this initiative, and I'm glad to be one of the top ones in that, so. Right. Last but not least, 80,000. As the national truck driver shortage has been an ongoing issue for several years, with the American Trucking Association estimating that the U.S. was short approximately 80,000 truck drivers. And our TCATs plan to be a part of the solution to this nationwide problem. So at this time, I'd like to unveil a new statewide marketing campaign directly aligned to the expansion of our truck driving programs at the TCATs. And I believe there's no one better to introduce this campaign than our board chair, Governor Bill Lee.
Hey everybody, Governor Bill Lee here. In Tennessee, we recognize that the trucking industry is a key part of our state's economic growth and success. And we've worked hard to support the trucking industry in the recent years to ensure that companies and Tennesseans have the resources needed to thrive by reducing burdensome regulations on the industry, increasing training opportunities, promoting collaboration between our state's TCATs, the Department of Safety, and businesses. And this year, with the partnership of the General Assembly, we are proud to launch the Trucking Tennessee campaign to strengthen our trucking workforce and continue to support this important industry. TCATs across our state are now making it easier than ever for drivers to become certified. Through programs like Tennessee Promise and Tennessee Reconnect, drivers can be certified at little or no cost and in as little as 6 weeks. If you're looking to skill up and start a career in trucking, visit truckingtn.com today.
So again, I'm excited to unveil a dedicated campaign known as Trucking Tennessee. The program has been crafted to emphasize the advantages and opportunities connected to careers in the trucking logistics industries while showcasing our institution's exceptional training. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Trucking Tennessee.
Whether hauling car parts down the highway or getting that heavy load to the job site or safely dropping off kids at school, it takes drive to launch a successful career in trucking. Commercial drivers are in high demand, and Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology can have your career ready in just 6 to 8 weeks. And with teaching locations statewide, you can find a program close to home. Best of all, you can likely attend tuition free. So, if you have the drive, visit truckingtn.com to get started today.
So as you see behind you, we are launching a comprehensive and extensive multi-channel statewide advertising campaign, including connected TV, display, pre-roll, audio, YouTube, email marketing, the whole bit. In addition to these widespread promotional efforts, we are providing our campuses with the necessary resources to promote Trucking Tennessee when they're in their own local communities, and equipping our colleges with marketing materials. We aim to create a cohesive, unified message with the prospective students and their families. And together, these strategies will amplify the visibility of the Trucking Tennessee initiative, ultimately driving, no pun intended, or maybe so, increased interest in truck driving programs and other programs at our Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology. And as I mentioned earlier, we are pushing people to an already award-winning website, truckingtn.com, to learn more about the truck driving programs and our 6 to 8 week completion, including the campuses that offer truck driving. And additionally, the inquiry form goes directly into the TCAT CRM to kick off the recruitment process. And again, thanks for the partnership with Office of Student Success for that help. So that's Trucking Tennessee, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about this or the other partnerships that we have.
So I'll have maybe not a question, but a comment. First of all, thanks for the hat. I love Tennessee trucking, but I just want to say that there is a shortage of truck drivers across the nation, especially in Tennessee. But trucks are so much easier to drive these days. I mean, it's all automatic transmissions. You don't have the standard shift in a truck or clutch anymore. It's all automated. All the safety technology that's on trucks today, the lane change prevention, the rear end collision, they're so much easier to drive, and anybody can drive a tractor-trailer truck today. So, well done. We need this. This will be good for Tennessee.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We love our hats.
Messes
Yeah.
up my hair, though.
I know.
Shane, too.
All right, so I think
I
we're,
just want to interject here, just
Yeah,
one comment. I
Counselor?
think you saw the gold awards that were won by this marketing team, but I don't think everyone fully took in the impact of what that means across the state. This is truly the most amazing marketing team known to man, and if we could give them one more round of applause for all they've done.
ditto that. I'm going to call on Dr. McCormick for any closing remarks.
So now you can see what an amazing team we have in external affairs. Sometimes I wonder why they even need me. I don't know. They're doing such a wonderful job. But from securing donations across the state to advocating with the General Assembly on behalf of TBR to marketing and promoting our system, I could not be more proud of this team. So if there are no questions, we also will be able to tell you more about Trucking Tennessee and other workforce initiatives in the next committee meeting.
Thank you, Dr. McCormick. If there's no further business to come before the committee, is there? Anybody have anything else they want to say? All right. Hearing none, the Committee on External Affairs for the Tennessee Board of Regents stands adjourned.
Thank you very much, and bad pun again, but we will keep on trucking this afternoon. I want to take a moment before I turn this over to Regent George to welcome our Commissioner of Education, Sam Piercy. Thanks for coming down to be with us. That means a lot.
A pleasure, and I do apologize to my colleagues for being a little tardy. I underestimated Bonnaroo on 24, and I will not make that mistake again.
Thanks for the heads up. Some of us will face it the other way, right? Going
That's right.
back tomorrow.
That's
We're
right.
glad you're here, and jump in at any time.
Thank you. I
Your
appreciate
perspective is critical to us. Thank you. And with that, Regent George, are you ready to continue the good news front here with workforce development, please, sir?
Of course, and thank you. At this time, I would like to call the Committee on Workforce Development to order and ask Secretary Perry to please call the roll.
Chairman George,
Here.
Regent Hooper, Regent Long, Regent Powers,
Here.
Regent Spurgeon.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Very good. Let's proceed. So now I'd like to call on the Executive Vice Chancellor of External Affairs, Dr. Kim McCormick, to introduce the Executive Director of the Center of Workforce Development.
So thank you, Regent George. The fourth department within External Affairs is Workforce Development, and your committee meets twice a year. And we have our Executive Director for Workforce Development here today, Dr. Jeff Sisk. So he is going to talk to you more about Trucking Tennessee, Blue Oval City, and all the other workforce efforts we have going on across the system.
That's the next slide, please. And so, Committee Chair George, members of the committee, Vice Chair Reynolds, Chancellor, other members of the board, thank you for hosting me today. I'm happy to bring you some updates on some selected workforce development topics. I get to follow Matthew Gann with his audiovisual presentation and the governor, so I have no hats to give out. Sorry about that. Like Dr. McCormick said, we meet twice a year in June and September board meetings. June board meetings will be highlighting selected topics. I worked with Regent George on this a few weeks ago, laying out the agenda. The September board meeting will be a report on workforce hours delivered for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2023. As community colleges and technical colleges are providing workforce training for industries and individuals on the non-credit workforce side of the house. Today's agenda is on your screen. I always like to emphasize what workforce development it is. I'll take a little deeper dive here on that in just a moment. We'll give a little more of an update on truck driving programs within our system, an update on Blue Oval City, some EV, electric vehicle related statewide initiatives, and some selected highlights from the college's workforce offices. Next slide, please. Thank you. So workforce development, TBR's mission is workforce development and student success. And I think we all know what student success is, but sometimes workforce development isn't easily defined. So I think to ensure clarity that we're all speaking the same language here, let's talk about that just for a moment. So educational institutions, whether you're secondary or post-secondary, we tend to approach workforce development from the perspective of helping an individual attain economic security, right? So that individual perspective. But if you're a chamber president or an ECD person for the state, you approach workforce development from a different view, one which benefits the sustainable economic growth of a community or your region. So that community or regional approach there, or societal approach. Still another group, your employers that we work with, they approach workforce development from an organizational perspective, focusing on those skills developments that are going to help their company to succeed and remain competitive in the marketplace. So what I do in my role is to work with system leadership, subject matter experts as we assess, develop, deliver, and evaluate TBR's workforce development effectiveness. I provide strategic support for all the workforce offices in both at the community colleges and technical colleges as we train our students, that's that individual perspective, as we partner with business and industry to prepare and support a competitive workforce across a wide range of occupations, that's that organizational perspective, and collaborate with our federal, state, and local government entities to support their economic and community development efforts, kind of the community, regional, or the societal perspective. So that last bullet point there is the pure academic definition of workforce development. A couple of Ohio State professors there. It's the coordination of public and private sector policies, programs that provide individuals with the opportunity for that sustainable livelihood, helps organizations achieve their exemplary goals consistent with that societal context. So that's what workforce development is. Next slide, please. Did a little more about truck driving. When I came to the board last fall, Chancellor Tidings asked me to bring along with me my responsibilities as the statewide curriculum coordinator for truck driving. Now, to Regent George's point, it is much easier to drive a truck. I don't have a CDL. I'm not sure I could pass the test that those folks are required to do. It's a 7-week long course within our TCATs, and it's a competency-based approach. But I think it's important, the Chancellor realized it was important to have that statewide coordination because we're having to navigate a lot of federal and state regulations. Regent George knows very well, he has a large trucking company, but on the training and the testing side, there's a lot of regulations that we have to deal with as well. So I brought that with me. And just a couple of updates here. Tennessee trucking is, as you saw, is going to be an incredible boon to us. It's such a tight labor market right now. Students have, or people have opportunities to walk into a job without any training at all and make a pretty decent wage for now. Economies goes in cycles. Folks who don't get laid off are folks with real skills, and truck driving is a real skill. I personally know truck drivers, over-the-road truck drivers, that are making 6 figures driving trucks right now. And it's a great skill, and it's very needed for our economy. You can have the greatest manufacturing base in the world, but if you can't get supplies to and from those locations, everything's at a standstill. So logistics and trucking impact everything. Right now, when TCAT Livingston comes online in fall of 23, we'll have 13 programs total in our TCAT sector with a capacity of 813 students per year. A couple of highlights I want to do here, and as well, Chancellor Tidings, in our partnerships with the Department of Safety and Dr. McCormick as well. Matthew mentioned our partnerships with the state. Department of Safety on the testing aspect of it, they actually have 2 trucks from Tennessee TCAT Shelbyville at their Columbia testing station to help reduce that log jam of testing and training more third-party testers for the state. So that's how we're working with the Department of Safety directly. TDOC, and here's another example, Tennessee Department of Corrections, we're talking with them now. TDOC has a new commissioner who came from Arizona, and he had a truck driving program, training program, within his state prisons in Arizona. They reached out to us with Lauren in the Academic Affairs Office through the Correctional Education Initiative to deliver truck driving programs to incarcerated individuals. They're going to be centered at the Luttrell Center in Shelby County. They'll be transferring state prisoners from various state facilities across the state to that facility. And essentially, they're going to buy out our truck driving classes at TCAT Memphis. We're looking at spring of 24 by the time this all comes together to equip incarcerated individuals with CDLs. This is something obviously the governor is very involved with, reduce recidivism rates. The reality is 94% of incarcerated folks today in the state will eventually be released. So let's equip them with a skill so they can be contributing members of the society again. We have a capacity right now of 813 students per year in our TCAT truck driving programs. That's if we fill every seat every time. But one way we can increase that is using a work-based learning approach, and that's what that final bullet comment is. TCAT Knoxville, TCAT Jackson, TCAT Memphis are doing great work in this space. Our curriculum is approved by the feds, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, through their entry-level driver training program. When you look at that, there's 3 buckets to those approved programs: an academic bucket, a behind-the-wheel range bucket, and the behind-the-wheel public road aspect of it. And the way work-based learning works for these utility divisions and city and county entities, and even the state, TCAT Chattanooga is working with the Department of Transportation to do it for the state. We bring them in, we teach them the academic aspects of the truck driving program, those required competencies. It takes about a week. We get them out on the range, doing the pre-trips and quick safety things, and then we put them back with their employer with some adjunct faculty members, and they can do all that behind the wheel public road with partners at the organization itself. So we can increase our capacity that way. And there's just there's 2 highlights there. 89 credentials issued, CDLs issued using work-based learning approach. And so whether it's apprenticeships, work-based learning, that's the way we can expand these opportunities. Next slide, please. Everyone's always interested in Blue Oval City. We had a big meeting yesterday. The chancellor was there with Clay Bright, the Megasite CEO, and some things that we talked about there. And I spoke with Regent George earlier. We went over the slide deck a couple, 3 weeks ago, but we're calling an audible on this first agenda item because the chancellor wants to talk about this a little bit in her chancellor remarks tomorrow. And Heath McMillan and I will give a little more in-depth update on the campus itself and some related activities. I will say this, the campus construction is on schedule. We're looking at mid-May of 24 for substantial completion, where we can start moving equipment in, training equipment, things like that, and then occupy as soon as the final punch-out list is done. So we're really hoping for June. And the weather's been cooperating, the supplier's been cooperating, and we've got an absolutely outstanding general contractor doing that site. I know Dick Tracy's in the audience, so if you throw me any hard construction questions, I'm going to deflect them to Dick Tracy. So I guess the structural work there for all the girders and all that kind of stuff is up, but also the workforce pipeline is a big part of what we're doing as well. Those meetings we had yesterday, Ford issued, they call them a statement of work, and SOW, it's essentially an RFP to do assessments of applicants for skilled labor positions within their plan. So we're going to be their workforce partner on that, developing a pure academic assessment as well as hands-on assessments for applicants for positions for skilled labor at their plant. So we have their onboarding plan. We know what level employee and what skill sets that they're going to bring on and when they're going to bring them on in these cohorts and how we're going to do it. It's all subject to an NDA that the chancellor had to sign on behalf of TBR. So I can't really share those numbers in public. I think I get arrested, Brian Lapps, I'm not sure. But I know I would get fired. So, so I'd be happy to discuss those numbers with you individually in a non-public session. But we have those onboarding plans. And I can tell you Russ Deaton is doing a lot of work on the granular look, on predictive analytics and how we're meeting their need and how our planned expansions are going to meet their need. And our numbers are in the green. And we're on track to not only meet their need, but exceed their need for skilled labor at Blue Oval City. And I keep saying skilled labor. in this type of operation, there's no such thing as unskilled labor. You're either skilled or you're super skilled. And so we're tracking the right way there for those 5,800 direct jobs at this facility. A couple of those things that we're adding on the workforce side of things, a couple of new programs, EVPT, which I think is going to be taken up in the academic affairs meeting, electric vehicle production technician to meet some of those production operator needs, as well as an AAS degree program in electric vehicle manufacturing that's been developed by Chat State for VW, but we're going to repurpose it and use it all across the state for GM and Nissan in Middle Tennessee and Ford and SK in West Tennessee. A lot of great work going on behind the scenes there. Next slide, please. So if we're going to be on the vanguard and leading in electric vehicle manufacturing, we also need to look at our electric vehicle infrastructure within the state itself. There's a couple of big grant opportunities that TBR is participating in. One is the Tennessee Community Charging and Infrastructure Proposal. The idea there is to kind of fill the gaps in primarily rural areas, right? And we know about range anxiety when our gas guzzling cars start showing low fuel on it. It happens if you drive an electric vehicle too. It's a real thing, range anxiety. So we need more charging stations across the state of Tennessee. So that's TDEC is the grant lead there. Tennessee Tech is the grant writer. Real focus on rural areas. We've got 8 community colleges and 8 TCATs who are interested in participating in this grant. So we're working on the next step there. What this is installation of 4 publicly accessible charging stations on these campuses if we get the grant funds. And this grant will cover up to 80% of the installation costs, and the individual institution will be responsible for the other 20% for the charging costs there. The other is the charging infrastructure workforce, and a lot of Chat State's got a lot of work in this area as well. TDOT is the state lead there. It supports NEVI, which is the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, and then the state application of that and the money they got from the Department of Transportation is TEVI, Tennessee Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Initiative. The idea there is to have publicly accessible fast charging stations along what they call AFCs, alternative fuel corridors, every 50 miles. And an AFC in Tennessee is all interstates and then Highway 64 along the southern border of Tennessee. So just imagine what that's going to look like. Pilot stations could apply for some grant funds here, and they'll have an island of electric vehicle chargers, just like they do their gas pumps out there. And even Buc-ee's, Chris Perkins's favorite place, can have electric vehicle chargers there as well. So that's the idea there. The grant requirements for the charging, though, is you have to have like a 98% constant uptime, and that the technicians who install and repair these, primarily the electricians, had to have this very niche certification, EVITP. So that's what we're working on through our workforce offices as a part of this grant initiative. Next page. Next slide. Thank you. And then I want to hit some highlights from our individual colleges' workforce offices. On this first slide, I want you to focus on who these partners are with our TCATs and community colleges. So every meeting that I do, I always want to highlight some of this. Nashville State is partnering with Vanderbilt University Medical Center for some medical assisting and central sterile processing workforce training. In healthcare, they're not all doctors, right? A lot of supporting healthcare occupations, they're in allied health, and they're just as important. And the doctors will tell you this too. They're just as important as the MDs that they're serving. TCAT Knoxville is partnering with the University of Tennessee for skills upgrade training for 14 employees in their building maintenance and electrical apprenticeships at UT. And then Roane State and TCAT Knoxville is partnering with the Y-12 National Security Complex at Oak Ridge for skills upgrade training for 48 employees, primarily machine tool, including maintenance for mills and lathes. So some really esteemed partners there with our TBR institutions. Next slide, please. In this final slide, I'm going to circle back to a focus on incarcerated populations, and I got a couple of pics here I want to share with you as well. TCAT Pulaski and Lawrence County Jail have a welding course there. It's a 5-week welding course. located at a manufacturing partner there in Lawrenceburg. So manufacturing is partnering in understanding the workforce challenges, and we're trying to be innovative in how we're approaching those things. TCAP Pulaski, General Motors, Giles County, Murray County Jails, offering a CPT, or Certified Production Technician, reentry project. It's about 300 hours of training funded with a grant from General Motors, and I think that grant award is up to $230,000 from General Motors to support this, and it's going through the TBR Foundation. And Vol State and Nashville State have an industrial readiness training program with Coffee County Jail. Started out in Give Grant 1.0, and this is a 48-hour course, IRT, Industrial Readiness course. It does the NCRC, the National Career Readiness Certificate, ACT, some OSHA training, some mechanical aptitude, workplace skills, soft skills, teamwork, emotional intelligence, and things like that. And so they have a partnership with the Northern Middle Tennessee Workforce Board, Vol State Community College, and this IRT program. They also do this correctional reentry program at Houston, Stewart, Montgomery, Coffee, and Sumner County jails as well. So a lot going on working with the incarcerated population. Got a couple of pictures I want to share with you. This is Paul McNeil from TCAP Pulaski's Lawrence County Jail program. Paul finished the welding program after he finished a 10-week CPT program. Paul is on the work crew inside the jail getting ready to release, and once he's released, he'll go to work at Southern Craft in Lawrence County, Tennessee. And I believe that's a casket manufacturer in Lawrence County. So he's lined up for work there. Next slide. I want you to look at the smiles on these folks. Those are the CPT credentials, and that's not easy to do. I've sat through a couple of those modules. You got to take a test and everything else. This is part of the General Motors grant-funded program. Next slide. These are a couple of pics from Nashville State and Vol State and the IRT program. This is at Coffee County Jail. The next one. And Sumner County Jail. One thing I want to cite, there's some credential testing within this, CPT, OSHA, and things like that. Every stat that I've seen so far is a 100% pass rate on those certification tests. And you think about it, right? Incarcerated individuals, that's their sole focus during the day. They welcome the opportunity to get out and improve themselves, and they're really focused students. And 100% pass rate on CPTs and the OSHA testing in these programs. We're really proud of that. Final slide. So Region George, that was workforce development defined, truck driving programs, Blue Oval City EV related programs, and some selected highlights from workforce offices. And I'm happy to entertain any questions you or the committee may have.
Excellent presentation. I have a couple of questions related to the electric vehicles. And the 4 charging stations, obviously that's going to be on the interstate system and possibly Highway 64.
Yes, sir.
I was a little bit confused about the rural opportunities or the opportunities. Were we talking about charging stations at some of the community colleges and the technical
Yes,
campuses?
sir. And so that's going to supplement the TEVI grant, which is focused on the main highways, those AFCs, alternative fuel corridors, all the interstates, and Highway 64. This is looking to fill in the gaps. And our community colleges and technical colleges, those 8 who expressed an interest in it, have space on their campus and willing to make them publicly accessible, or at least explore that idea to put charging stations on their campuses to help fill in the gaps that the other grant won't touch.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, congratulations. Wow. I mean, you guys are reaching out there and cutting edge, and it is very impressive. It is so impressive, it's hard to track and keep up with. So I really appreciate what you all are doing. I had also a question on the EV related statewide initiatives. I'm a little confused as to what role TBR is playing in that. My understanding is you're applying for a grant that will pay for stations to go in. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Up to 80%. Yes, sir.
And then what role does TBR play?
So primarily in that other grant, where to support TEVI, because those stations, those charging stations along the alternative fuel corridors have to be installed and maintained by electricians who have this specific certification, EVITP. And our TBR workforce offices can deliver that certification.
Okay, so TBR from the TEBI standpoint is going to do the training, is that correct?
Yes, sir. These are licensed electricians already on the construction side, but they'll need this specific certification to do that installation and service work on those.
Is there any role that we're playing other than the certification?
We're a big provider of the electricians and the construction workers anyway for the companies who will win those bids to build those stations. But primarily for these two grant opportunities, it's more about the certification training for the electricians. And on the CFI grant opportunity, that's more about providing space, not only for public accessible people, for folks to bring in and charge their own vehicles, but our TCATs who have automotive programs and our community college that have automotive programs, we'll get into training electric vehicle repair as well. So we'll need the charging stations ourselves to help support those programs.
Okay. One of the things, this is very exciting. But are we actually applying, will it be our grant?
We'll be a subrecipient of the grant. So TDOT will be the lead on one and TDEC is the lead on the other. We'll be a subrecipient of that money.
And then, so the funds come to us and we hire contractors?
Our faculty, who we already have on staff, if I have to hire adjunct, we'll do that as well. We'll put them through the certification training, so then they'll be able to deliver that training to the contractors who want to install and service the charging stations.
So the contractors who's paying the contractors to install these?
They'll bid. All right, so back to my pilot or my Buc-ee's example.
Yeah.
Pilot could apply for grant funds
through
TEVI.
Okay.
Through TEVI, right?
But
There'll be a
not
cost
through
share.
us?
No, sir. No, sir.
The funds never come to us. The grant funds never come to us.
Right, not on that one. But we can get money through TBR to do the skills upgrade training for our folks, but for the installation of them,
And the maintenance?
Correct.
None of our funds are going for maintenance, none of it's going for installation. It's the grant, what's coming to us is going for the training, which is a cutting edge, highly skilled component.
So two different grants. That first grant we talked about, the CFI grant, that's an 80% cost reimbursement for the cost of installing the charger stations at TBR institutions. The other 20% will need to be covered by the campus itself.
Okay, so the 80% grant is coming to install on our property.
Yes, sir.
Just as if we were putting up bumper guards for parking cars or
Correct.
whatever. Okay, all right, good. All right, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. I think I just misheard something. So for clarification, this is on the truck driving program related to the corrections department and TCAP Memphis. I thought I heard you say something like buy it out from TCAP Memphis.
Sorry, that's inside baseball slang. Let me explain that.
Sorry.
So truck driving are taught in cohorts. So here we are in June. Our new term for a TCAT will begin in September. And let's take TCAT Memphis, for example. Dr. Sutton has 4 truck driving instructors, 4 trucks that can handle all those students. So she will have a cohort of 16 students starting, at that September start date. So when we're talking with TDOC, rather than us starting just 16 open enrollment students, TDOC is going to buy all of those available training seats. That entire cohort out will be TDOC incarcerated individuals. When I say buy out, that's what I mean. It'll be just exclusively TDOC incarcerated folks who have all of those training seats.
So if we do that, then we're essentially taking away any seats available to just the general public, is that right?
And it's a scheduling issue, but if we do it far enough out in advance, I won't say taking away, they'll either need to come in earlier or they can catch the next cohort. A cohort is 7 weeks.
Okay.
So at the most, it'll delay someone 7 weeks for our program.
That's right. It's not semesters. I'm
Correct.
thinking.
We'll fit in 2 cohorts in 1 academic term at a TCAT.
Thank you much.
Sure.
So how many rounds of 16 do we get in an annual period?
Times 3, so 6 rounds of 16 at TCAP Memphis.
Okay.
I didn't know I was going to have to do math. I didn't know math was involved in this, sorry.
Excellent job.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any more questions? So I'd like to call on Dr. Kim McCormick for closing remarks on the workforce development.
So, Dr. Sis, thank you for that wonderful report. We just want to thank you, Regent George, for taking on this committee. And Chancellor, we thank you so much for reimagining and revamping this workforce development department. We are hearing across the entire state from other agencies that they are very thankful that this department is in place, from ECD to safety to labor. So thank you all for that. If there are no other questions, we are concluding.
So we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regent George. Well done, and thanks again for taking on this committee. Good work, lots of good work going on. So I'm going to continue my string of bad puns and say, now that we're all charged up, get it?
I was going to say that this committee is geared up. We are not tired or exhausted, and we'll call the Committee on Finance and Business Operations to order.
You win.
How's that? Secretary Perry, please call the roll.
Thank you. Regent George,
Present.
Regent Gill,
Here.
Regent Kastner, Regent Kastner, Regent Womp,
Here.
and Chairman White.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, as a quorum is present, we will proceed. Related to
Mr.
the
Chairman,
consent.
Before we get started, can we request that Regent Kastner put this cap on? He has just blinded me with it.
Oh, I should have known. Okay. Related to the consent agenda items, members please recall at the committee chairs meeting, we were briefed by General Counsel Lapps on the following policy item, and materials were provided in advance. So unless anyone has a question about the consent agenda, we will act on this agenda with a voice vote. The consent agenda is a revision of TBR policy 7.01.00.00, the firearms and other weapons. So does anyone have any questions pertaining to this revision? If not, can I get a motion to approve the policy revision?
I motion. I second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. This does require a voice vote, so all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, carries. The second agenda item is the review and consideration of tuition, mandatory fees, and non-mandatory fees for academic year 2023 to 2024. And I'll ask that Vice Chancellor Fox summarize the staff's recommendations. There she is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. So we do have a very packed agenda for finance and business today. So just to forewarn you, if you doze off or fall asleep, I will not be offended. I can't see you behind me, but anybody in front of me, it won't hurt my feelings. There's a lot of material to get through today, and I appreciate you all bearing with me. I'll try to go as quickly as possible, but feel free to ask questions if you need to in between there. There's a lot of content and a lot of numbers today. So the supplementary documents were included in your materials today in advance of the meeting. In the interest of time, I'm not going to read every data point on the following slides, but I will highlight key points or components as we move through this presentation. Action items on the agenda today include tuition and fees recommendations, estimated and proposed budget approvals, as well as the capital budget approvals. So let's start today with the staff recommendation for maintenance fees, or commonly referred to as in-state tuition, out-of-state tuition, mandatory fees, and non-mandatory fees for annual year 23-24. Next slide, please. Before I present the recommendation, I want to quickly review the general financial environment that drove these recommendations. Our community colleges saw continued enrollment declines in fall of 2022, with FTE enrollment down 9% from fall of 21. However, the majority of community colleges are projecting no enrollment growth, but no further decline for next year. We will discuss the governor's budget for FY 23-24 in more detail later, but higher education received $111.7 million in state appropriations for the upcoming year for the outcomes formula, inflation, and partial funding of the statewide salary increase. The TBR system specifically received over $37.2 million in recurring operating investment and $14.3 million in non-recurring operating investment. This does not include capital funding, which will be discussed later in the presentation. Next slide, please. To provide some historical information, slide 6 includes a chart comparing FY 13-14 to FY 22-23, as well as the cumulative percent and dollar amount increase over that same period. I will note that FY 13-14, FY 22-23 comparison may not be as relevant this year, given the pandemic impacts on enrollment, as well as the historic state appropriation investment in higher education provided to keep tuition flat in 22-23. But the cumulative numbers do show that the average change to be under 3%, and approximately $1,000 increase at community colleges and $832 increase at TCATs over that same period of time. To me, this slide demonstrates the commitment of this board to keep higher education affordable for our communities. Next slide, please. Slide 7 is a visual representation of the community college tuition history in aggregate by year since 2004. Again, the flat or minimal increases noted on the previous slide here are showing you the percentage by year since that 2004 date. I would also note that the Focus Act passed in 2016, which expanded THEC's scope to set a binding range each year for tuition, with the first year of action being 2018. Next slide, please. This slide is showing the same graph of tuition history over the same period of time, but this one is focused on the TCATs. Next slide. At the May 11th Commission meeting, THEC voted to set the binding tuition range at 0 to 3%. You will recall we previously discussed that this range predicated a request from THEC of $150 million for higher education to fund outcomes, inflationary adjustments, and the salary pool. The governor's budget provided $111.7 million for higher education. This gap means that all institutions received lower inflation-adjusted revenue per FTE in 23-24 than in the current year, requiring institutions to implement varying levels of cost reduction measures. Next slide, please. We will discuss the mandatory fee requests submitted by our community colleges and recommended for approval by TBR staff. As background, please note that any mandatory fee approvals are factored into our overall binding range. We add tuition and mandatory fees together, and therefore changes in either impact the total percent change. Since we calculate tuition increases by hourly rates first, the board could approve a 3% tuition increase, as well as the 3 mandatory fees presented to you today, and remain in compliance. This is due to a 3% increase in hourly rates, calculating out to 2.91% increase when rates are rounded to the whole nearest dollar. You have 3 mandatory fee increases on the screen and in your materials. This includes 1 request to newly establish a student activity fee and 2 requests to increase a current student activity fee as well as a student government fee. Staff support the 3 mandatory fee increases as they were brought forward by students at these colleges through a process that involved student body participation and would support student activities or events as recommended and approved by students. For additional context, 8 of our 13 community colleges currently charge a student activity fee ranging from $3 to $23 a semester, and our TCATs charge $10 a semester. Funds will support social, educational, leadership, community engagement, and recreational events, including but not limited to guest speakers, domestic travel, student appreciation events, and other student programming initiatives. Next slide, please. Next, we will review the non-mandatory fee requests recommended by TBR staff for approval. These fees do not factor into the binding fee range, as they are tied specifically to a course and not charged to every student enrolled. These recommendations include the approval of 2 new non-mandatory fees and the elimination of 4 fees. Next slide, please. Northeast State Community College requests approval to establish an aviation specialized course fee of $145 per credit hour. This slide provided in your materials details the courses for which this fee would apply, as well as how the college determined the amount of the fee. In addition, Northeast State Community College requests approval to establish a specialized welding fee, next slide, please, of $56 per credit hour. As noted previously, this slide is in your materials and details how this fee would apply and how they determine the amount. Currently, 2 of our community colleges and all applicable TCATs charge a welding fee. TCATs and 1 of the community colleges are charging $100 a course or term, and the other community college is at $50 a credit hour. The Northeast State request seems in line with others as it relates to the need and reasonableness of the amount. Therefore, we are recommending these for approval. Next slide, please. On this slide, you will see several requests to eliminate fees that are no longer applicable or relevant. Cleveland State is requesting to eliminate 1 fee for a course no longer being offered in their catalog, and Pellissippi requests to eliminate 3 fees as the course is either no longer offered or the fine is no longer applicable. Additionally, staff recommend the continued suspension of the online course fee for fiscal year 23-24. This fee was in use by 5 of our 13 community colleges to offset the cost of delivering online courses. However, with the pandemic and shift to more online or hybrid courses, the colleges have suspended charging this fee over the past 2 years at TBR's request. Next slide, please. Now, we will move into the tuition recommendation for annual year 23-24. Next slide, please. First, I will give you a little background on the framework around how we calculate these recommendations. As this slide notes, the 3-step process involves identifying the difference between salary pool appropriation provided and the actual cost, inflationary impacts on cost of goods and services, and any other specific institutional needs to determine the total revenue need. Step 2 translates that total funding to the level of increase needed in student revenue percent, and then finally translates into the dollar amount change in hourly maintenance fee or tuition rate. Next slide, please. As described on the previous slide, step 1 in our process involves the estimated calculation of the cost of the salary pool increase versus the amount of state appropriation received toward the salary pool. This chart is showing that the calculation for the individual community colleges and includes the average difference among the 13. You can see in the bottom far right corner that 3% of the 5% pool required was unfunded through appropriations, meaning our colleges would need to fund this amount through other revenue sources. Next slide, please. Slide 18 is showing the same calculation, but for our individual TCATs. You can see here that 2% of the 5% pool required was unfunded through appropriations and would require other revenue sources. Next slide, please. Step 2 in the calculation process includes the estimate of expense increases or fixed cost due to inflation. As background, the system office calculates inflation using the average of HEPI and CPI. For purposes of this discussion, HEPI, or the Higher Education Price Index, is an inflation index designed specifically for use by institutions of higher education. Compiled from data reported by government agencies and industry sources, HEPI measures the average relative level in the price of a fixed market basket of goods and services purchased by college and universities each year through current E&G funds, excluding research. Many find this to be a more accurate indicator of cost changes for colleges and universities than the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index, which is the measure of the average change over time in the prices paid by urban consumers for a market basket of consumer goods and services. As you can see on this slide, at the time of calculation, the HEPI rate was 5.19% and the CPI was 6.04, for an average of 5.62%. Historically, the system office has calculated the share of inflation to replace at 80% in an effort to encourage colleges to identify efficiencies and cost savings opportunities as part of the budget process. Next slide, please. Slide 20 and 21 are showing you a summary of the Step 1 and Step 2 calculations and the indicated student revenue increase in both percent and dollars, first for the community college and then for the TCATs in aggregate. This slide explains that to remain revenue neutral for annual year 23-24 as compared to the current year, community colleges would need a 3% increase to cover their portion of the state salary pool and a 2.08% increase to cover 80% of inflationary increases. This shows a total need of 5.08%. This is then adjusted to meet THEC's binding range and leaving the recommendation at 3%. Next slide. As noted, this slide shows the same calculation for the TCATs, whose total need calculated to less than that of the community colleges, but at 4.43% was still above the binding range set by THEC, and therefore was adjusted to meet this requirement, seeing their total also at a 3% need. Slide 22 and 23 show the same information, a summary of Step 1 and Step 2 calculations in both percent and dollars, but it's shown by individual community college on this slide, and on the following slide, we'll see the TCATs individually. Again, summary of that aggregate information broken down by TCAT. A lot of numbers on the screen. I apologize, it's very small. So this brings us to the recommended tuition rates for annual year 23-24. The following slides show the credit hour and trimester rate change in dollars for the community colleges and TCATs respectively. The current slide shows you the dollar amount change for in-state, out-of-state, and dual enrollment students. This does not impact Tennessee eCampus or E-rate. As you can see here, a 3% increase results in an approximately $6 increase per credit hour at the community colleges for in-state and mandatory fees. Next slide, please. This slide shows you the dollar amount trimester rate change for the TCATs, which is $37 per trimester or $111 annually. Next slide, please. More really small numbers. But on this slide, you will see the dollar amount change as well as the percent change broken down by individual school for the community colleges. The average annual increase at the community colleges is $127. You will note that the combined totals differ minimally among the community colleges, and this is due to mandatory fees previously approved and being assessed at those colleges. You will also see the $111 annual difference for the TCATs at the bottom of this chart as noted on the previous slide. Next. That concludes our overview of the maintenance fees, out-of-state tuition, mandatory and non-mandatory fee requests. We recognize and appreciate the administration and General Assembly's strong commitment to higher education. Their past commitments to funding higher education have helped put us in a position to weather the enrollment declines and inflationary increases over the past couple of years. But our calculations show that our colleges have additional needs, most heavily driven by the high inflationary numbers continuing to increase the cost of goods and services and impacting the delivery of quality educational opportunities. If there are any specific questions, I'll be happy to address those at this time.
Great. Questions?
Generally speaking, all these costs, the tuition is covered by scholarships, right?
We do have a very robust financial aid program in the state of Tennessee, so Essentially, yes, I mean, tuition and fees. There are some non-mandatory fees that aren't covered, but generally financial aid covers those as well. So for the most part, and the majority of our students are on some kind of financial aid or state aid program.
Publicly, when this goes out, that there's a 3% increase, I think we all need to be saying, yeah, but it's covered by the various scholarships, so.
And just for context, you know, as far as what others are doing, as far as universities and systems, so all the LGIs are at a 2.92%. Their average increase was, most of them were on 3, a few lower, mid-2s, with the exception of UTK, who's at 0. But everybody else considers that they're at a 2.92, so this is in line with what everyone else is doing.
Go ahead. Yeah, going back early, I have a somewhat esoteric question, but you used the term of operating investment. What is that?
It's our state appropriation.
Okay.
Another way of saying funding, revenue. It's
Okay,
an
so that's,
investment in higher ed.
that's a term put down by the legislature, is that right? They call it opera, that would sound like something they would say, but.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay, I get it, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so is there a motion to approve the consideration of the tuition, mandatory fee, and non-mandatory fee rates for academic year 2023 to 2024?
So moved.
Okay, so do we have a second? Oh, you're not on the committee,
Oh, gosh.
but I appreciate your enthusiasm.
I take that back.
I appreciate it.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. So do we have a second? Down to my left here?
I'll second.
All right. This one requires a roll call vote, so Secretary Perry, please call the roll.
Regent George,
Aye.
Regent Gill,
Aye.
Regent Kastner,
Aye.
Regent Wamp,
Aye.
and Chairman White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. Excuse me, the third agenda item is the review and consideration of funding operations for the 2023-2024 fiscal year and approval of the finalized or estimated budgets for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. Vice Chancellor Fox, turn it over to you.
Yeah, it's me again. Sorry, I don't have any hats or any cool graphics or anything like that. Just more numbers and graphs. But yeah, this one should be a little bit shorter. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we begin the look at the budget proposals, I do want to briefly update you on the state budget. Next slide. First, let's discuss items from the governor's original budget recommendation that are still fully funded in the proposed budget. Under capital outlay, the budget includes roughly $1 billion to fully fund the recently completed TCAP master plan. In capital maintenance, the budget includes $50.6 million for 39 TBR projects. Also included in that number is $7 million for current TCAP projects adjusted due to inflationary increases. Under special initiatives, $9.5 million non-recurring for the Blue Oval City project to provide funding for equipment for the new campus. $1.14 million for the correctional education investment to provide funding to TBR for increased enrollment in that program, and partial funding of the 5% salary increase. In addition, items that were added as part of the April amended budget include, under capital, $1 million non-recurring funding allocated for the Henry Stafford East Tennessee Agricultural Expo Center at Roane State. Under other budget initiatives, $3,048,000 non-recurring funding to establish a 2-year Student Success Technologies pilot program for the CRM and CLR softwares that you've heard about from Dr. Lemming previously at all of our TCATs and our community colleges. And finally, under legislative amendments included under capital, $4 million earmarked for TCAT capital funding from capital inflationary costs for Chattanooga State. Now, as we look at the budget information, I want to briefly remind you of the budget process. So working within the individual institution's shared governance process, each president has the responsibility and full authority to propose a budget to the chancellor and the board. The colleges normally receive the draft operating state appropriation amount recommended for their institution and the governor's budget proposal in January or February. The recommendation in the governor's budget is normally derived from the recommendation from THEC based on funding formula outcomes. Since THEC has not yet set the binding tuition range, campuses do not have that information until after the proposed budget is developed. The campuses make assumptions on change in enrollment that may anticipate the build-out of their major portions of their revenue budget. Campuses will normally follow their internal process for budget development, which includes input and requests from budget department heads, budget hearings with campus leadership, and will conclude with decisions by campus leadership that reflect the priorities of their institution. Again, this process normally starts in January and February and concludes with the campus budget submittals to TBR staff in early to mid-May. TBR staff then reviews and consolidates the budget information and presents it to the board, as I'm doing today. After board approval, the budget information is forwarded to THEC and then Finance and Administration. Now on to the numbers. As you may recall, we prepare 3 budgets each year. The budget cycles include the proposed budget, the October budget revision, and the current estimated budget. Today, I am presenting 2 of those 3 budgets for your action. We have the current budget estimate for FY 22-23, as well as the proposed budget for 23-24. The current budget estimate is the last budget of the current fiscal year. It includes final adjustments to the current year budget and is the budget against which final year-end actuals are compared. Next slide, please. The proposed budget is based on the level of state funds recommended in the governor's proposed budget, as well as early estimates of factors such as enrollment growth and availability of federal funds. The proposed budget does not recognize factors such as tuition increases, level of grant or revenue contract activity, or final adjustments required by the state budget action. The revised budget is presented to the board in December and will take these and other changes into account. As we get into the slides on budget, I thought it might be helpful to provide a brief overview of revenue and expense categories, or where the money comes from and where it goes. So this slide shows the source and percent of total revenue the system receives by category, as well as types of expenses paid using these funds. Not surprisingly, the majority of revenue at 66% is coming from our fees and appropriations. On this slide, you'll see 4% comes from sales, service, and other, which is briefly described as workforce development activities, assessments, investment income, things like that. Next slide, please. 29% of funding comes from restricted revenues, which can briefly be described as restricted for a specific purpose or use. In the case of revenue, this may be federal or state grants, federal or state financial aid to students, endowment income, or private gifts and donations. Finally, 1% of revenue comes from auxiliary, which is typically your food service and bookstore operations or any kind of third-party operation like that. These all go toward funding expenses in categories such as instruction, teaching, academic support such as library, student services, tutors, success coaches, mentors, recruiting, institutional support, which is the administration and operational services of the campus, plant operation, which is your maintenance, janitorial, grounds, and construction, and finally, scholarships. The following slides will provide a high-level summary comparing the fiscal year 23-24 proposed to the current year FY 22-23 estimated and some differences between the two. As I noted earlier, I'm not going to read you all of the information on these slides because it's a whole lot. But I will highlight some of the notable changes on each of these slides. As a general rule, TBR staff considers anything under a 10% change per category as immaterial, and we do not require our colleges to provide detailed explanations for these. So I'm going to probably stick to things 10% and higher, but if you have a question, feel free to ask me. The first slide we are reviewing shows a comparison of the current year FY23 estimated revenue versus the proposed revenue, showing the year-over-year change. Press pause on that top state appropriation line. We'll cover those in the next slide. Under sales, services, and other, this includes things like unrestricted, local, state, and private contracts. Sales and service also includes live work, testing fees, facility rentals, surplus and investment income, and this category is also where any CARES or HERF lost revenue is categorized. sure you guys have all heard the CARES and HERF money. It's coming to an end this year for the most part for most of our schools. So again, this is where that lost revenue is categorized. So the decrease seen here is due to recording this lost revenue. Some of the CARES and HERF grants allow for the reimbursement of lost revenue due to COVID. To allow these funds to be spent on any institutional expenses, the grant reimbursements are recorded as unrestricted other sources. The availability of these funds is expected to decrease in the coming year as grants are concluding, thus explaining this reduction. Under restricted, this decrease occurred primarily, again, due to reductions in CARES and HERF grants being received by the institutions for both student and institutional. The funds are expected to be spent during the current fiscal year, with significantly less being carried forward into the next fiscal year. And additionally, federal financial aid assistance for students would decrease in line with any enrollment declines should those occur. So the previous slide showed a 4% increase in state appropriation revenue. This slide is showing you the reconciliation of those adjustments, including a reduction for prior year non-recurring initiatives, and then additions for the salary pool, group insurance, new initiatives, and funding improvements or outcomes growth funding. These additions were described in more detail earlier in the presentation related to the governor's budget. Next slide, please. This final revenue slide shows the revenue source by sector for the TCATs and community colleges separately. As you can see, these are very similar with just a few percentage points difference in each category. Next slide, please. Now moving to expenditures. Slide 39 shows expenditures by function. You will note modest total growth in expenditures at the bottom of the page, 5% total, and this also includes that 5% salary pool increase. Next slide, please. Slide 40 is showing you expenditures by classification. This again is showing you an overall increase in expenditures by 5%, with the higher end being in the salary benefit class and the capital outlay. The salary benefit increase is primarily due to this 5% salary increase recommended by the state. In addition, we have several FY23 vacant positions or positions funded for partial year that are fully funded in fiscal year 24. And the increase you see under capital outlay is seen here primarily due to one college delaying a purchase of over $600,000 of capital equipment to next year from this year. This slide provides a summary that includes unrestricted and restricted fund expenditures and transfers. A 7% overall decrease in expenditure is reflected when restricted is included. Transfers also decreased from proposed, and we'll discuss that on the next slide. The decrease you see in restricted is again due to the HERF grants received by institutions to offset the effects of the global pandemic, and a reduction in financial assistance due to students due to the enrollment declines. Most of the CARES and HERF grant funding for students is expected to be spent this year, as the grant does not carry forward into the next fiscal year. Total expenditures for unrestricted and restricted for the proposed FY23-24 are roughly $1.3 billion, down $93 million from the current year estimate, mostly as previously mentioned, due to CARES and HERF funding and those grants ending on June 30, 2023. Next slide, please. This slide breaks down the transfer activity or transfer of carryover funds from the previous fiscal year. These are non-recurring funds. Normally, these carryover are budgeted as a transfer to plant funds in October or April for non-recurring investment. I apologize. A lot of talking. For non-recurring investment in physical plant and equipment. Under retirement indebtedness, you'll see the change here, and that's due to the debt retirement of $350,000 at Walter State for a Greenville expansion project. You also note the large transfers to unexpended plant and renewal and replacements in the estimated budget were made to increase reserves from CARES and HERF grants, as those were not expected to be continued in 24. Transfers to reserve are common and are expected of our colleges to remain fiscally responsible. The higher than normal amounts you see in the current year transfers can be attributed to those CARES and HERF funds that have been received over the past 3 years, as described previously, and this is expected to standardize in the coming years. And what you see for proposed 23-24 is more accurate of a normal transfer year. Next slide, please. This chart shows a reconciliation from beginning fund balance to ending fund balance. The overall decline is showing $24.7 million, but this is primarily attributable to institutions budgeting to transfer those carryover funds to plant funds for future equipment and capital outlay, and they are no longer unrestricted funds. When you look strictly at revenues versus expenses, excluding these transfers, the colleges have budgeted a net gain of approximately $532,000. Therefore, they are considered balanced budgets and living within their means. Next slide, please. This slide summarizes the total number and type of authorized positions for fiscal year 24. With approval of the budget, the board will be authorizing grand total positions for the system of 6,993. You may note the fact that the community college and system office percent of unrestricted positions versus restricted is more varied at the TCATs. This is a result of the special initiative state appropriation funding received over the past several years for TCAT projects that include things such as the waitlist or capacity funding, the correctional officers training, and CDL, to name a few. And which most of these funds included funding for faculty positions that would be considered restricted for this purpose or program. The total number of unrestricted positions for the upcoming year is 6,397, as compared to 6,396, an increase of 1 position. The total number of restricted positions proposed is 596 compared to 560 in the current year, an increase of 36 restricted positions. Again, the restricted positions are tied to special appropriation or grant funding designated for a specific purpose. Next slide, please. This slide provides a final summary of the FY23 estimated and FY24 proposed budgets that are before you today for approval. However, before we ask for your approval, we need to include some information related to the locally governed institutions, or the LGI budgets. As you are aware, these are the 6 public universities that are not part of the UT system. Next slide, please. As you will recall, under the Focus Act, we are required to consider the LGI budgets, and that consideration is limited to those matters that are necessary to fulfill existing debt covenants, representations, agreements, and obligations under financing agreements entered into with the Tennessee State School Bond Authority. Next slide, please. To that end, university budgets have been received and reviewed in accordance with TBR Policy 4.01.00.05, consideration of university budgets, and have been determined to meet debt service coverage requirements, have been found to be mathematically correct and internally consistent. Universities have certified compliance with required representations, and except as noted, no judgments have been made regarding these university budgets. Chairman White, university budgets are recommended for approval as being in compliance with the above TBR policy. Additionally, staff recommends approval of the FY23-24 estimated budget and the 23-24 proposed budget for the system presented today.
Great. Thank you, Vice Chancellor Fox. Questions? If not, no questions. If not, is there a motion to approve the funding for operations for the 2023-2024 fiscal year and approval for the finalized budgets for the 2022-2023 fiscal year? And please note that this will include approval of the LGI budgets as required by the policy board.
I'll make that motion.
Great. Thank you.
I'll second.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, got a second. So this item also requires a roll call vote. So Secretary Perry, please call the roll.
Regent George.
Aye.
Regent Gill.
Aye.
Regent Kastner.
Aye.
Regent Womp.
Aye.
And Chairman White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
That was my goal, to bore you into no questions. That's good. You want me to sleep? It's great. Thank you all so
Great
much.
job. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, our fourth agenda item is the review and consideration of the capital budget recommendations for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. So I'll call on Executive Director Dick Tracy to review the capital budget recommendations.
Oh. No, I'm still on the last subject for just a second if I can, if I can make a statement of sorts. First off, it's an incredibly complicated piece of finances that we go through here, and it's done very well, in my opinion. I think when I first came here, I didn't understand much of it. I don't understand much more now, but I'm convinced that it's all being tracked well and well cared for, and so I want to say that. And the second part is that when you look at this, one of the things that jumps out at you is just, I mean, we've been through a pandemic, we've been through lots of different things, drops in attendance and whatnot, and yet the administration and the legislature has been very generous with us. And I think that, and having been able to watch a lot of the budgets that the legislature puts together, they take it seriously, and there's nothing slips through there that hadn't been argued over and whatnot, and for us to have gotten as much as we have, we owe them a great deal of thanks. So.
Well said. Thank you. Dick, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Chairman White, members of the committee. For your consideration, I want to present the staff's recommendation for the 24-25 capital budget requests. If you'll look at the screens, our first item is the classifications that we'll be presenting are for capital outlay and capital maintenance. These are in accordance with the guidelines of THEC and the administration for the capital budget requests. You can go to the I've known Sam since, how old? Sam, you were probably in elementary school? I know I worked with his dad and his uncle forever. I think if you have any questions about the current capital outlay budget, we're going to cover those tomorrow. Director Holmes will be giving a presentation on where we are, kind of a follow-up from our meeting that we had last spring. So we'll go into in-depth about what we're on in the process of the upcoming funding. All right. I just woke up.
Okay. Trying to think of a trucking pun for calling a timeout, but we'll, the truck stop? So we'll take a quick timeout here.
Go to Buckins.
Technical issues resolved.
Don't go too far. Don't anybody go too far. Hopefully this
Okay.
will be resolved quickly.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so if you want to jump to the third slide. Huh? Yeah. Yes. All right, so our capital outlay projects have been analyzed for priority. These are based off of the THEC formula, the 5 categories are the state goals and attainment goals, the campus master plan, strategic plan, project description and impact on the campus, the THEC space guidelines, and facilities assessment, as well as external funding. We're recommending funding of 3 capital outlay projects for 24-25 as shown on this page. The total of the list is recommended is $174,500,000. When adjusted by the match contribution required by the institutions, the capital outlay request is $172,300,000. The 3 projects we have, TCAT Nashville, this is a project that we will be replacing 2 lease facilities, one in Robertson County, which we will be building a facility along with Vol State on their campus. We're currently in a lease facility. And the Sumner County campus is the acquisition in addition to a facility that we're operating in Portland. The Vol State TCAT Hartsville will be a new campus in Wilson County that will utilize both those institutions. And the third project, TCAT Shelbyville, this is build a facility on the Motlow State campus in Lincoln County, which will replace the lease facility that TCAT Shelbyville currently has. There are other projects that were submitted. TIC only allows us to submit 3 capital outlay projects. The capital outlay funding is very important to the quality of institutions, and over the past 5 years, we've received an average funding of approximately $295 million, including our special appropriations. Next page. If you look at the screen, you'll notice a chart depicting the external funding match. The TCATs aren't required to match, the community colleges are, and this is part of the pass-fail for projects when submitted to THEC. Vol State currently owns the property, has purchased the property in Wilson County, and they're looking at the purchase of additional property for this. So that will meet their match requirements. Also, it's important that we are able to maintain our existing facilities. Over the past 5 years, we've received an average funding for capital maintenance of approximately $27.9 million. We need to continue to make funding of capital maintenance a high priority. Our capital maintenance funding formula produces an annual target of over $71 million. The annual target number is a level of capital maintenance funding for our buildings and infrastructure that we need to strive on for each year. On the summaries, pages 2 and 3, we'll have a list of our capital maintenance projects. We worked carefully on the list to address the major needs. With approximately 10.8 million square feet of educational and general space spread out on 40 campuses, as well as our campus operations, we have both a constant and growing need for the capital maintenance funding. We're recommending 33 projects for 24-25 as shown on those on pages 2 and 3, and these projects total $54,639,000. In addition to the annual renewal request, there were 32 additional maintenance projects submitted by our campuses totaling $56,883,000. The total for all the submitted capital maintenance projects is $111,522,000. The next slide shows a 5-year estimate for capital outlay and maintenance. Out years for capital maintenance have been adjusted. Since the actual appropriations will vary from our annual request for capital outlay, the totals for years 2 through 5 will change. An allocation for capital maintenance is shown along with the yearly totals, which produce a 5-year total of over $1.2 billion for capital budget requests. The next slide gives a recap of staff recommendation for the 24-25 capital budget request for a total of $229,139,000. These recommendations are presented for your consideration and approval. And Chairman White, that completes our presentation.
Well, I'm just trying to, the capital maintenance request, is that the last slide?
Yes.
Yeah. But that is the last slide, though.
Yes.
So. Yeah.
No, the last slide. Yeah, the last slide would be the capital maintenance request.
Could you go back one slide again, please? The 4.156 billion replacement cost?
Yes, sir.
That's for everything?
That is for the facilities. What, we have we keep an ongoing facilities assessment and a facilities inventory. So we look at the type of facilities, and against that, we look at the current cost per square foot for replacement. And when you do that, that generates the total cost for replacement, which is part of the formula.
I think that's exactly the right way to look at it. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no other questions, is there a motion to approve the recommendations as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Regent Gill. Does I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Regent Kastner. This item also requires a roll call vote, so Secretary Perry, would you please call the roll?
Regent George,
Aye.
Regent Gill,
Aye.
Regent Kastner,
Aye.
Regent Womp,
Aye.
and Chairman White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
This completes our agenda for today, so if there is no other business to come before the committee, then I will declare the committee meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all, and a well-deserved little break thrown in there as well. So all is well. Regent Mary Lou Apple is on a lovely trip with her granddaughter this week, and I hope they're having a grand time. So with that, in her absence, I will call the Committee on Academic Policies and Programs and Student Life to order, and once again ask Mariah to call the roll.
Regent Apple, Regent Burdine,
Here.
Chair Lady Reynolds,
Here.
Regent Shelton,
Here.
and Regent Barlin.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We have a consent agenda of 3 items, which we were briefed on at our May 31 committee chairs meeting. 3 policy proposed policies, that is, those are before us. Ethical recruitment of prospective students and military affiliated individuals, admission, enrollment, and readmission of service members, and finally one with regard to micro-credentials and learner records. Hopefully everybody had a good chance to listen to Vice Chancellor Lemming at that time, but I will open the floor up if we have any questions for her, and if there are none, we'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, please.
I'll move for approval.
Thank you, Regent Burdine. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Regent Shelton. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. I see Dr. Reed standing there. Come on up. And we're going to talk about 2 new academic programs at 2 of our community colleges. Once again, we were briefed on these on May 31. There was a robust discussion. So hopefully today, in the interest of time, we can hit the highlights and take any outstanding questions, Dr. Reed, if you don't mind. Thank you. Dr. Reed, we need your microphone on. Thank you.
Thank you. I was hoping my theater voice would kick in. So good afternoon, Madam Chair, Chancellor Tidings, and members of the board. First, I'd like to give you just a very high-level overview of changes to the academic program approval process before introducing you the 2 new programs to the state. Again, previous to about 13 years ago, keeps going out. THEC had offered delegated authority of approval of TBR degrees and certificate programs. That was reinterpreted last spring. So as of July 2022, now any program new to the state for TBR degrees also requires THEC approval. New to the state means no other community college has offered it at this point. I do want to clarify that any certificates under 24 hours, as well as our duplicated degrees, meaning at least one community college has offered it, it's only approved by the TBR board. And again, this does not impact any of the TCAT programs. So only changes to this as a result of their new policy that they approved in July 2022 is that new programs to the state, the two you are here now, after you approve these programs, it would then go to the THEC Commission. I will present to the THEC Commission for their approval prior to implementation. Any questions on the changes to the process for new degrees to the state before I introduce new programs? I will keep moving into our first new program. I would like to ask Vice Chancellor Alicia Fox to join me up here, as well as our president for Chattanooga State Community College. I am pleased at this time to introduce to the board the new AAS in Electric Vehicle Engineering Technology. Again, after I present, we will hear from Alicia Fox on the components of the revenue and the enrollment projections, and then President Ashford has a few quick highlights of the program. Next slide, please. This AAS program will provide an educational pathway for students interested in the electrical vehicle manufacturing and maintenance industry. It will prepare them to manufacture, diagnose, service, and repair electric vehicles. This program is designed to be between 61 to 64 credit hours, and that breakdown is there of 16 general ed hours, 33 major field corps, and 15 other curriculum courses. This program is designed to build upon the partnership that Chattanooga already has with Volkswagen and introducing the production of electric vehicles. Their current partnership, again, is based on the production of internal combustion engines, and so this is an expansion of that partnership. When this program starts, initially it will be offered as an apprenticeship through Volkswagen, and by year 3 it will start on the Chattanooga campus. There's a huge workforce demand for this. Tennessee is #1 in the Southwest for EV manufacturing and investments, and Volkswagen itself has projected over 25 new EVs in the next 10 years, and they're investing $800 million into their facilities here in Chattanooga to transition to electric vehicles. I also want to highlight that they are projecting an additional 1,000 new jobs in Tennessee as a result of Volkswagen's transition to electric vehicles. And again, a requirement of those folks at Volkswagen going through the apprenticeship is that they must earn their associate's degree through this program. Next slide, please. This is just a quick visual to show y'all the intentional ways Chattanooga has thought about pathways to the AAS program from TCAT and providing credit articulation, as well as starting this in a dual enrollment space. Next slide. This shows you a quick highlight of workforce demand and wage data, and that EV technicians who would be coming out of this program would earn approximately $59,000 to $65,000 annually. Next slide. We also want to highlight that this program is aligned to Drive to 55, the Tennessee Workforce Development Goals, as well as THEC's goals of growth, recruitment, and alignment. Next slide. Here I would like Vice Chancellor Fox to highlight revenue and cost projections, as well as anticipated enrollment and graduate data. As soon as she finishes, we will hear from the president, and then we will take questions on this new AS program in Chattanooga.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. I wasn't prepared that we were doing this today, so I apologize. But I did give a pretty detailed overview at the committee chairs related to the revenue and cost projections for this program. I'll be happy to answer any additional questions that you have on it. But as you can see on the screen, they had very minimal one-time cost related to equipment in year 1 and 2. And then faculty costs, which again are fairly minimal for the program, with tuition and fees covering any of their recurring costs going forward. They have very generous partners that are donating a lot of this expensive equipment for the program to get it up and running. And they have a robust renewal and replacement fund to carry on the renewal and replacement of that equipment as it maybe ages out in the future. Again, they're showing enrollment in year 1 at 12 full-time FTE, in year 2, 24, and then ramping up to 30 in year 3. Again, tuition revenue numbers on the screen. I've already talked to you about a lot of the numbers, but I'll be happy to answer any questions you have about the revenue and cost projections for this program. Again, it's been vetted through our system office as we're part of the new program evaluation team, and we support this.
President Ashford?
Thank you, Dr. Reed, and thank you, Regents, for the opportunity to just briefly comment on our electric vehicle engineering technology program that is before you today for vote, tomorrow for vote officially, but before the subcommittee today. One of the things I'm most proud of is the way this curriculum was developed. Not only was the curriculum developed in partnership with our colleagues at VW, but also this was curriculum that was developed with TCAT automotive faculty as well as our engineering faculty who work already with VW. So it's an amazing collaboration, a collaborative effort. And as Dr. Reed showed on a graphic, and as you'll hear a little bit more about tomorrow when I present, there are great pathways involved for the students who are in our automotive technical program through the TCAT area of the college. Also, students who are currently enrolled in dual enrollment programs through Hamilton County Schools. There are pathways that lead to this program. And not only will this program prepare students to work for VW, but also with other EV manufacturers. So I'm hopeful that we will have your support to move forward with implementing this program for the fall.
Yes, just a quick question for Dr. Ashford.
Yes.
Or maybe somebody else about the program. I was trying to follow your graphic without any support, and that's probably my own fault. I shouldn't have tried that. But am I understanding that you are working alongside the TCAT as well? And isn't there some kind of unique relationship in this case? Okay.
So at Chattanooga State, the TCAT is actually a division of Chattanooga State.
Okay.
And so, but it's still a very unique setup to develop the curriculum in that manner. And so we're really capitalizing on the embedded nature of the TCAT within Chattanooga State and having that partnership.
So just in the weeds, if they do that 4 semesters at TCAT, and they still come in as a freshman, but just as a second semester freshman, or is that how that works?
Right, they would come in with some credits already and the experience that we can then build on in the program.
Okay.
And of course, we're doing some modifications in the TCAT program as well to prepare for EV, and that'll be a little bit further into the future.
Is that much easier done in this model because TCAT falls within the community college, or is that something that gets replicated?
I think it certainly can be replicated across the state. It's just certainly easier when everybody's all together and working on the same team. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And let me add to that, once this program is approved, we will be bringing the other community colleges together to replicate this, because this will support Ford and other colleges around that. Also in September, we'll actually be hosting at Jackson State. We're going to have a regional articulation session so that we can look at the EVPT program that the TCATs in the western part of the state are building to then articulate credit hours into this. So we're doing that as part of meeting some of Ford's needs as well. So we are driving articulation meeting, particularly around this degree as the model. Other questions? Okay, next slide, please. At this time, it's my joy to highlight Northeast State's AS in automotive technology. I will ask President Jeff McCord to join me at this time, and for Vice Chancellor Fox to stay close by. This program is an Associate of Applied Science and Automotive Technology to meet the customized industry-specific needs within their 5-county district. This is a 60 credit hour program, and really what they're doing is realigning their current programs to have a name that is more easily identifiable to their employers. So they're going to realign the programs of automotive service, automotive body collision, and motorsports into this new degree with a concentration in automotive specialists. So they're using all the same courses and curriculum and faculty, but because this degree does not exist in THEC's inventory, it falls under new degree, but everything has already been taught. before. So again, this will be the first AAS in automotive technology. It does have embedded certificates and represents, again, the needs of their workforce partners. As you're aware, Northeast State is close to Bristol Motor Speedway and Bristol Dragway, which host and promote multiple motorsports events for NASCAR and NHRA. So they have a high need for workers in the automotive racing industry nearby, which is also met through the motorsport pathway. This program will allow their students to meet industry-specific needs, to have access to courses among multiple pathways, and really it makes the students more marketable because industry now understands what they are learning and what they're trained in coming out, whereas the earlier program names weren't as clear to employers how students were being prepared. When we look at the data around workforce, folks coming out of this program will make an average of $46,000 to $48,000 annually. And in terms of future hire, they're projecting more than 10,000 new hires in the state of Tennessee, with about 1,800 of those in the East Tennessee region along this degree pathway. If you could, next slide, please. And we go one more. Again, this program is already aligned to all the same areas of Tennessee Drive to 55, the TBR strategic plan, as well as the education and workforce goal as well. This also will start in the dual enrollment space with embedded certificates and multiple on and off ramps. Next slide, please. Vice Chancellor Fox will highlight again the revenue and projections so you can see the cost of the program.
And again, this one was pretty easy. As Dr. Reed said, it's already an operational degree and program, so all of the costs, expenses, and revenues generated were already known prior to this. It's basically just a name change. So as you can see on the screen, they have the estimated cost for year 1, 2, and 3, as well as their tuition, fees, and grants revenue. Again, showing that this program is sustainable and will be able to cover all the costs in years going forward. Enrollment, again, was easy to determine because the program is already in function. So you can see here they're expecting 36 graduates in year 1, 40 in year 2, and 45 in year 3. Again, happy to answer any questions about the numbers on the screen related to cost and revenue, but they had a lot of historical data already, so pretty easy there.
I have a question. I have a question. So you expect 36 students. How many are in it now? You said it was existing. Do you know, Jeff?
I think it's 24 or so right now. Yeah.
Okay.
And at this time, I would like President McCord to share any other highlights about the program so you have a sense of where they're going with it.
Thank you, Dr. Reed, and thank you, Board. I almost said thank you, Committee, and I messed up there, but thank you, Board, for having me. This currently are the programs in industrial technology, and our employers didn't really know what that meant, so at the suggestion of the employers to move that, and it allows us to recruit to that program as well. For us, it allows us to, when we talk about alternative fuel vehicles, we know there's going to be a transition, helps us to manage through the transition and give a broad set of skills to our students as they come in. So appreciate your consideration of the name change, of the reorg, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions for Dr. McCord?
If not, that
Can you get us tickets to Bristol?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did somebody?
I said, can you get us tickets to Bristol?
I can't answer that in a public forum.
Oh, can you get us tickets to Bristol? That's funny. I couldn't hear. Oh. All right. Well done, you guys.
Thank you.
Dr. Reed, anything else on this before
I
hopefully
think
we
we're
vote?
closed with new academic programs. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So once again, we've heard about these two, I'll bias this and say outstanding opportunities for our system, but it does require approval by the committee. If no one has any further questions for Dr. Reed and the team, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Danny.
Thank you, Regent Varlin.
I'll second.
And Miles will, Miles can get you Bristol tickets, by the way. You're sitting next to the man.
I can.
Yeah, so, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, once again, we simply need a voice vote to approve these two new academic programs for two of our community colleges. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Dr. Reed, let's talk about some changes in programs.
All right, thank you. We're pleased to present to you 35 new program proposals in our TCAT space that are being presented to you for your review and approval. These proposals allow our TCATs to be very responsive to the needs of students, businesses, and industry. We also are sharing 68 academic actions that were submitted by TCATs to the Vice Chancellor for approval based on Section C of TBR Policy 2.01.02.00, where it requires only notification to the Vice Chancellor because they're very minor changes. At this time, Assistant Vice Chancellor Tashaka Hollins will provide highlights of the program for your consideration, and she will do a very abbreviated version of that.
In my presentation, you all are going to hear a lot about truck driving, EV. We have kind of covered the gamut from marketing as well as workforce development. So you'll hear some of that alignment and what our colleges are doing to align there. So good afternoon to you, Madam Vice Chair Reynolds, members of the board, as well as Chancellor Tidings. On behalf of the Office of Academic Affairs and the Chancellor, I am honored to present these proposals for new programs, program expansions, and modifications for your consideration. The board supports these academic programs and expansions as they promote open access, completion, and community and workforce development themes of our strategic plan. TCAT's efforts to deliver quality instruction to Tennesseans seeking career entry and or advancement in the state's, in some of the state's most in-demand and high-wage areas is what we are here to do. In the next few slides, I will highlight a few of our programs and partnerships that illustrate the support of the overall package of recommended academic actions that are before you today. Last year, Governor Lee's generous $5 million investment to expand correctional officer training across our TBR institution, which was subsequently approved by the General Assembly, was a significant financial boost and has afforded our colleges an opportunity to serve the demands of the correctional workforce. We are pleased to report that TCATS Athens and McMinnville will be implementing and expanding academic offerings in this space. They will be joining 20 of our other TCATs that are already offering this program. So earlier we heard from Matthew Gann about the truck driving campaign. And in spring of 2022, Governor Lee and the legislature made a substantial $9 million investment to scale up truck driving programs in every region of the state to meet the substantial need of the commercial drivers who help power our state's economy. TBR supports TCATS Crump, Hohenwald to expand their existing truck driving programs into other counties in their service area. In an intentional effort to boost Tennessee's leadership in global innovation economy, TBR has been highly engaged in the Blue Oval City endeavors, as we heard from Dr. Sisk earlier. We are also a core partner with the University of Tennessee and others on a 2-year National Science Foundation $1 million grant, which was announced last month to advance transportation and to revolutionize the future of mobility in our state. As a part of that overall work, TCATS Crump, Memphis, and other West Tennessee TCATs propose to implement the electric vehicle production program to address workforce needs, not just for Ford Blue Oval City, but for all of our OEMs that are going to be in the EV space. This particular program will also, we will work on alignment into the AAS and electric vehicle as well. Tennessee's major and critical healthcare sector shares similar challenges with the overall U.S. healthcare sector in meeting the demands for highly trained and skilled employees. To help ease our state shortage, TCATs are expanding the nursing pipeline in particular by increasing LPN graduates. TBR fully supports TCAT's Hohenwald, Livingston, and Memphis efforts to expand and implement practical nursing pathways. TBR partnered with the Tennessee Department of Agriculture and Tennessee Forestry Association to expand programs and partnerships for this industry. TCAT Hohenwald has a stellar forestry and ag technology program, which they are proposing to extend to other locations in their service area. In summary, the Office of Academic Affairs received 68 program modifications that were approved by the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs. And as you can see, the TCATs are working to be more responsive to workforce needs by aligning education with careers. The Office of Academic Affairs respectfully requests the board's approval for these proposals, which are included in your materials, and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Hollins. Any questions? Hearing none, we do need a motion to approve these changes for our TCATs.
So moved, Dan.
Thank you, Regent Varlin.
I'll second.
Thank you, Regent Burdine. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Always good to see you. Dr. Reed, do you have any closing words?
That's it for this part of our presentation. I'll be back a few times.
Okay. All right. We'll look forward to seeing you again. Oh, Russ Deaton is on his way up, I do believe, to give us an update on reimagining the community college experience, which we've all enjoyed hearing about over the last year or so. And now, oh gosh, another one just came. The rubber is about to meet the road. Hey, and by the way, as
Yes,
you
ma'am.
wrap up this part, would you transition on to Amy for us?
Had already
too?
planned that, yes, ma'am.
Perfect,
Will
thank
do,
you.
will do. Well, Vice Chair Reynolds, Dr. Tidings, members of the board, it's good to see you. I had intended to challenge you, Vice Chair Reynolds, on a pun for this, but you beat me to that, so job well done with that. Thank you, Carol.
If you have one, please share it.
If I have one, what'd you say?
A pun. It said, don't hold back.
I don't know if I have one right now. That's what I need you to do. That's what you're ready for.
Okay.
Yeah. So as background for the Reimagined Community College experience, I want to kind of linger a bit on where we've been and what you've heard the last few board meetings, but also hopefully this will be a refresher for you and a good orientation for the newer board members as well, to get some background on what this idea is. And the origins of this, of course, are going to go back to COVID-19 and the residue of the decisions that public policy made, the impact it had on higher education, and the sort of moment we had to kind of sort of figure out how we react to the moment in time where COVID-19 and its impacts were really front and center. And the idea behind this concept paper was not just to make incremental changes to programs or policies, but to do something that would fundamentally impact the student success trajectory of the TBR system, and to more meaningfully link economics, workforce development, and academic programs. So it started with that reality, and it attempted to sort of directly confront two dynamics, which we've all been living with for the past few years. One is that need for alignment, which is something that is at the core of what TBR is, to align workforce and educational programs, and also to confront the reality of what being an open access system means and the student success challenges that we face that you hear about from us at most every meeting. All of this is built, though, upon a foundation, a long history, if you will, of Tennessee and TBR being a very innovative place for a lot of cutting-edge innovations across the community colleges and TCATs. We have, as you know from our board meetings, produced a record number of credentials. We have responded to the call of Drive to 55, so much so you'll recall that Governor Haslam 4 years ago asked us to increase our targets because we're already meeting those goals. That's a solid foundation. Our graduation rates have doubled in the last 6 or 7 years, and we have cutting-edge innovations in a variety of areas you hear about a lot from the staff at TBR. Everything from the way we attack academic preparation challenges, the high-impact practice work that Dr. Lemming does, a host of things that we do on the screen, and then some that are a good, solid foundation here. However, we also have challenges, and there are many ways we can look at the student success lens for TBR, dual enrollment space, returning adults, inbound transfers, but we can also look at it from the perspective of a first-time, full-time freshman. That gives us one lens to use, not the be-all, end-all, but it's one lens. And that lens really illustrates the success challenge we have. So think about 100 community college freshmen that we have, and here is the outcomes we see for those freshmen. These are numbers you see, but they're compacted here for brevity. 76 of those 100 are on a university parallel or a Tennessee transfer pathway whose intention is to ultimately get a bachelor's degree, 76. 16 of those 100 will not accumulate any credit hours and will drop out within their first semester encountering the community college. 25 of the 100 don't come back for their spring semester. When you hear us talk about fall to spring retention, this is that number. When you hear us talk about fall to fall retention, and we quote 52%, those 48 are not coming back for their second year. 26% do get a credential. That's that graduation rate of that first-time freshman class you see from us. But 15 of those 100 will ultimately get a bachelor's degree somewhere along the way. So again, 76 come in with that intention, declaring university parallel, being on a transfer pathway. 15, though, get that bachelor's degree. Now, the backdrop here is the economy, and there is a rich and vast literature on the importance of what are called middle skills. And this is the space between what you can do with a high school diploma and higher education, getting a credential, a completer. And this is not a false dichotomy between a bachelor's degree and an associate's degree. This is the importance of getting a credential to get into the economy where most of the jobs in Tennessee and nationwide are. But again, for reference, 76% of those freshmen are on a transfer pathway, university parallel. We see this middle skill imperative too in the wages. You saw this data 1 or 2 meetings ago, breaking down what people make at various points of their credential or completion. Those who don't complete, in red, 5 years after departing the college are at about $22,000 and change. Completers, $36,000, and that varies a lot, as you see in the 3 or 4 remaining bars there, by program. Vast differences in economic outcomes based on what credential you pursue, and more importantly, whether you complete or not. Again, the imperative of the student success challenge. All of which sort of suggests the question that, again, I think was the antecedents of that paper were this. If you were building a community college from scratch today, how would you design it? How do you account for an economy that is rapidly evolving, where you have inflation and wage acceleration that still is ongoing today, where students' return on investment calculus is changing rapidly, where the open access mission is still at the heart of what we do, where we have challenges, but the imperative of alignment. How do you account for all that if you're building a community college from scratch today? And that's where the Reimagined Community College attempts to really enhance 3 aspects of what the colleges do. First is to really enhance the career exploration aspect of the community college. Many of the schools do this now, but they are resource and capacity constrained. And oftentimes students, and I'm experiencing this in my family with my niece who's going to go to Jackson this fall, are sort of drifting or defaulting into a university parallel because they're not really sure what they want to do. So at the heart of the reimagining experience is very intentional advising to connect their educational aspirations, their skills, interests, abilities with programs that are preparing them for the workforce. Second, and this is at the heart of the idea, is to inject into that very first semester a workforce-ready certificate that the student can hopefully use for one of 2 things, either as a springboard, hopefully, to further credentials, embedded certificates within associate's degrees, hopefully to go into a bachelor's degree. It's the first step in that journey. Or, if they are the 1 out of every 2 students who does not make it to the next fall, they've got something to fall back on, something to utilize and take into the workforce that connects them with a meaningful career. With that, we will contrast that with sort of the traditional experience now. Again, students have sort of more limited opportunities than we would like to explore those careers, to be advised before they get to college to sit down with an instrument, with some sort of tool and an advisor to talk through where their interests are, where their abilities are. Secondly, most of those freshmen, again 76, will default to that transfer pathway. Instead, in the reimagining experience, students will join career communities where they will be part of an effort that is directly aligned to a career. I don't know if 76 of 100 is the right number or not. I don't propose to know what the right number is, but I do know that 76 on the transfer pathway represents a bit of a misalignment with what the economy is saying that we need. Secondly, that first year, in contrast to what most students take, general education courses, many of whom will need learning support courses, instead would be a workforce-ready credential. And again, as they move beyond that, transferring those, stacking those, to use our parlance, into other associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees. Not as an end in and of itself, but to have that certificate be the first step on a journey to their future career. So, again, we've got 4 colleges, as you saw last September, who will pilot this effort this fall. Southwest, Jackson, Pellissippi, and Walters. And I'll tend to move west to east as I go on this to illustrate what they're about to do and how they are illustrating those 4 concepts. So for instance, Southwest, before enrollment, those students will have a career coach tool that will, again, assess what their interests are, assess where their curiosities lie, and then to connect them, hopefully, with those credentials that Southwest offers, with a coach who's guiding them through that process. That second feature about career communities, Pellissippi has wonderful use of a tool called U-Science, which again, my kids have taken this in middle school, where you again try to assess and inventory what it is you like to do, what are you curious about, and what credentials and what careers connect with that. And they'll be coordinating that among their students and then grouping those students into career communities and career clusters. At Jackson State, like all pilot colleges, that first semester will be a workforce-ready certificate, which again articulates into further credentials. So all of that will be front-loaded. So again, the first semester will you encounter those certificates and those credentials for students. And then lastly, Walters really well illustrates the stackability of that. They have worked through how to articulate that first semester certificate into future associate's degrees, thinking about the use of prior learning assessments, the TCAT to community college transfer issue. Again, not as an end in and of itself, but as a jumping off point for students as they pursue their college career. These last 2 slides will summarize this. I won't go through these. There is a QR code here in the corner and another one on the next slide where if you want to know more about it in a single page infographic, the full details of what those colleges will do this fall are on there. I do finally want to do 2 things. First is acknowledge the leadership at these schools. These projects don't happen because of anything that TBR does. They happen because of what the project leads at the colleges do and their teams. Southwest, Sheree King, I hope you're watching. Jackson State, Jennifer Cherry. Pellissippi, Angel Hughes, and at Walters, Angie Smith and Donna Siegel. They have been the ones who have, perhaps to their chagrin, have been meeting with us frequently to work through what their plans are to see this through to its implementation here this fall. We will bring, of course, results back to you as we go, but this fall, that experiment starts en masse at those 4 colleges, and we're excited to see what happens. Be happy to answer questions if there are any at this juncture.
I have one quick one of Commissioner Piercy, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but as you listen to this and process it, alignment with you guys, you feel good about this?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. I think there are a number of opportunities that have emerged over the last few years, and with the new funding formula going into place, that is increasing opportunities. We have the Perkins 5 funds stretched now down into middle school. We're seeing more schools being intentional about introducing career exploration earlier, but being able to do this at this particular junction point, I think is critical and complement the team on the initiative all around.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. Yes, please.
It really sounds like you selected the right schools to be these pilots, you know, and all that
I think so.
opportunity came up. These really good
we were
projects
fortunate
to sort of see, okay, what's going to work the best, and it's good.
I think so. Yeah, we had a lot of applicants. Most schools applied. Those 4 really stood out, and it feels good to kind of see their thinking and the evolution of those plans throughout the last year. Regent Walt?
Yeah, kudos to some out-of-the-box thinking, a lot of hard work. I know you guys have been working on this a while. And help me if you would get some clarification. So if someone's coming into one of these 4 schools, each of them in their very first semester is going to take an ASS track so that they will have something to show for it at the end of the first semester. Is that correct?
If they choose. And again, the student choice is still paramount here. If they get advised and they really want to be on that transfer pathway, this won't force them out of that. But we will be much more intentional about making sure they are aware of those other options and how they connect with workforce needs.
Okay, so it will be optional. Okay.
Sure, of course, yeah.
Okay, all right, good, thanks.
Hey, I'm curious at Jackson State, and maybe just more broadly, Russ, because you're an expert, the American Job Center interaction. I don't know how many times I've ever heard our system be connected to those. Is that productive? What is the proper interaction between a TCAT, or what's the best interaction between a TCAT or a community college and an American Job Center?
Well, that's a good question. Let me answer it in the micro way, because the macro question about their relationship, I would need to probably get some assistance from others who know better. But at a micro level for this project, that has been the vehicle that Jackson in particular has chosen to really push the career exploration part, to provide a very credible partner to connect with careers in that area, in that region. They've got resources to bring to bear. They've got tools already in place that have helped Jackson use that partnership as the vehicle for the career exploration. So it's worked really well in that case. The broader question, I'd probably need some help from others on this.
And so does that mean that the American Job Center is pushing into the school system? Is that what?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
They are, again, the entity that Jackson's partnering with to execute the career exploration, kind of do some of the advising and kind of help open their eyes to what the careers are in the area that connect with the industry in that region.
So just out of curiosity, going back to the American Job Center, it's one of my intriguing subjects that intrigue me. So are you saying that Jackson is now getting some significant referral from the American Job Center?
Not necessarily that. I think,
Are you saying you're looking for them to get, because of this program, that there will be significant job referral from it?
There could be. And their project's focused on the first-time freshman, so it's more of that 18-year-old, that traditional age student. I think the AJCs often are the path for adults to come back to school as well. So Jackson's focusing on it more in a partnership to really enhance the experience of their first-time freshmen and provide that career exploration tool for them.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. That was excellent. I love the idea of sort of wrapping around these kids when they come in the door and before enrollment. I really like that because it's almost, sometimes just walking in and being in there and then you just kind of lose them. This way there's sort of a process to bring them in. I love that. And we talked a little bit about this when I first came on the board about some kind of testing to help identify what their strengths are and what they might lean towards. So I'm hoping that's kind of what this is about.
Yes, a lot of those tools are, and I'll use Youth Science as an exemplar here because I'm familiar with it just from my household, but it's sort of asking you about your interests, your skills, your abilities, your curiosities, and once it kind of has a sense of who you are, it then connects that to careers and in which programs kind of provide that bridge to that career.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I would just say that one thing I would like to see as it relates to maybe dual enrollment is that sort of tool be used maybe junior, senior in high school so that it's because I just wonder about students making decisions about TCAT versus community college and what's the appropriate route to take possibly. And once you enter into the school, it's a little bit difficult to switch, although it's not impossible. That gives them an opportunity more in advance and might help them direct more clearly which direction they go.
I completely agree with that. The earlier the better. If there are no other Vice Chair Reynolds.
We'll hear from you again December with
I'm
an
sorry?
update? December update for us?
Yes, we'll probably know, it'll probably be after the first semester ends, we can look back to know. So maybe more, we'll bring you updates, yes, but we will have more outcomes probably March at the earliest once the first semester closes. Yeah. If there are no other questions, then let me provide a prologue, if you will, for Dr. Moreland, who's going to talk about the coaching project. And let me draw 2 points here. One is connections, because this that you'll hear about really is trying to be responsive to the same set of dynamics, the student success challenge, the issue of academic preparation specifically, and how we are trying to innovate around addressing that problem. And secondly, this is part of a larger body of work that y'all have heard about from TBR staff the last 4 or 5 years, where we are trying to bring external resources to bear, grant funds that allow us to connect two really important features of TBR's identity: our research capacity, and then our ability to innovate and put experiments in the field as a governing board to try out what works. We have a broad suite of programs across areas in academic affairs, the research team, student success, and others. This is one of those that tries to be at the cutting edge of what a governing board can and should be doing. With that, Dr. Moreland, I'll yield the mic.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Vice Chair Reynolds, members of the board, and Chancellor Tidings. I am honored to be with you this afternoon to share an update about the Tennessee Coaching Project. The Tennessee Coaching Project, as Dr. Deaton shared, is a pilot research effort designed to improve success rates for students who arrive at college and are deemed academically underprepared for college-level coursework. This project launched almost a year ago in fall of 2022. Now that we have nearly a year behind us, we're pleased to share an update about this work. This project is being piloted and tested at 2 outstanding partner community colleges, Jackson State and Northeast State Community College. This work is also supported by about $3 million in grant funding that TBR was fortunate enough to receive. After a year, we are seeing some very encouraging early results from this project. And so today we'll share a brief update. This update will come in 3 parts. First, we'll talk about the goals, the purpose of this project. Second, we'll talk about how it works and how the model has been implemented at Jackson and Northeast. And we'll conclude by sharing an early look at the results. But we said we would begin by discussing the goal of this project. The Tennessee Coaching Project is designed to address a singular challenge, and one that you've already heard about this afternoon. The academic preparation challenge at community colleges is real and persistent. As you all know, when students arrive at community colleges, their academic readiness for college coursework is assessed using several metrics, mostly based on their high school academic performance or standardized test scores. Students who do not score sufficiently on those assessments are required to take additional coursework to build up their skills and get college ready. Last fall, more than half of incoming community college students across the state were academically underprepared based on those assessments. Now, students who are academically underprepared traditionally, and still in many other states, would have been required to take what we have traditionally called remedial courses, courses that would have allowed them to build up their skills in math, reading, or writing. But unfortunately for many students in that traditional model, those remedial courses were a barrier to students. It was discouraging to have to take those remedial courses, and very few students made it past those remedial courses. Now, nearly a decade ago, TBR and Tennessee Community Colleges led the nation in the implementation of a new solution to that preparation challenge, what we call learning support. In that new innovative model, students didn't have to take those remedial courses first before they could get to their college coursework. They could advance directly to college coursework. And then, alongside that college coursework, they would be required to enroll in learning support courses, courses that help them build up their skills in math, reading, and writing. That model that Tennessee Community Colleges implemented nearly a decade ago is still held up across the nation as one of the most effective and innovative ways of addressing the preparation challenge. It has been successful. And yet many students, many underprepared students, still struggle to persist. Last year, when we look at those underprepared students who arrived at community colleges, only 2 out of every 5, 42%, made it to their second year of college. And so we know there is more work to be done to better support underprepared students' success. And that's the problem the Tennessee Coaching Project is trying to tackle. The idea of this project is that we can continue to provide that academic learning support material that students are receiving, but we can also give them a coach. In addition to that academic content, we can provide them with a success coach, someone whose job it is to help ensure and connect with them with resources and ensure their success in the first year. So, if you will, to continue the metaphor that we have used throughout today's meeting, if you think of that traditional path for underprepared students who were faced with those remedial courses on their path to graduation, their underpreparation and the ways we addressed that was often a barrier. They were faced with these remedial courses and they were stopped at a red light. A decade ago, when community colleges advanced this more innovative model, now students were able to accelerate towards graduation. We had our foot on the gas, but nearly half of students still weren't making it past their first year. So the idea of this new model is to keep our foot on the gas, still allow those students access to college-level coursework and that additional learning support, but this time, let's give them a map, a guide, something to help them connect to resources throughout their first year of college in the form of a coach. Now, to really understand this, it's one thing to think about the policy context, and you're going to see some data here in a moment, but I want to ask you if you'll indulge me by doing something slightly different today to understand this project. I want you to put yourself in the mindset of a first-year student, a student who is planning to enroll at a community college this fall. If you're like me, it's been a couple of decades since you last had to be in that mindset, but go with me here. Imagine you're planning to enroll at a community college this fall. And you show up for orientation for new students when it's time to register for courses, and you are told by someone at the college that you are not ready for college-level coursework. And because of that, you're going to have to take these additional learning support courses. Last fall, 7,000 community college students across the state got that message. And imagine how a student might feel when they are told they're underprepared for college-level coursework and they have to take these extra courses. Perhaps you might feel confused about why this is the case and what these classes are for. Perhaps you might feel discouraged that you just graduated high school, but now you're being told you're not ready for college. We know that underprepared students are disproportionately low income, first-generation students. So perhaps you might be looking around saying, who can guide me through this? Who can I turn to for questions about that? And as you're feeling those things, just as the semester is beginning and classes are ramping up, you get a text message. And that text message comes from your coach. And you meet for the first time Mary. Mary is one of the coaches that was hired as part of this project, 10 coaches across the state. Mary is a coach at Northeast State. And for the students that are fortunate enough to be one of Mary's students, they got a message from her at the start of the semester saying, hey, I'm Mary, and I'm here to be your coach in the first semester. Mary offers, when she first reaches out to that student, Mary offers to meet with the student, to talk about their goals, to explore careers, to do that important career advising that we just heard about from Dr. Deaton, and to help connect them with resources that will support their success. And most importantly, Mary offers you, I'm going to be checking in with you a lot. You're going to be hearing from me every week or every other week to make sure you stay on track. The first time you meet with Mary, she's going to work with you on setting some goals. She's not just there to hold your hand, she's there to hold you accountable, to think through, why are you here? What do you want to do? And how can we help you develop a plan to succeed? Mary is providing in-depth, frequent support to these students. And the way Mary is able to do that is because she has a very small caseload of students assigned to her. Each of the 10 coaches involved in the Tennessee Coaching Project work with 150 students a year at most. Now, across community colleges and TCATs, we have a number of advisors and coaches doing similar work with great impact, but they are often strapped for capacity. Many of our existing advisors and coaches across the state serve caseloads as large as 500 or 600 students at a time. But Mary has this small caseload so that she is able to check in with those students frequently throughout their first year. But perhaps you are not a Northeast State student, perhaps you are a Jackson State student, and you are working with Oliver, another one of the coaches. When you meet with Oliver, he's equipped with data and resources from the American Jobs Center and from other resources to help you explore careers. 80% of our underprepared students are currently enrolled in transfer pathways, general transfer pathways. So Oliver is going to make sure that you know that that's what you want to do, and maybe there are other options, and find for you a program of study that matches your career interests and leads to a family supporting wage. Or perhaps you're back at Northeast and you're one of Zach's students. Zach is also one of the coaches who is part of this project and a Northeast State graduate. When you meet with Zach, he's going to be talking with you about what you're learning in your courses, connecting you with academic resources, everything from tutoring to the campus food pantry. When you have a bad week and you miss a few classes, maybe you miss an assignment, and your math teacher notices, your math teacher is going to send an alert to Zach, and then Zach's going to call you and say, hey, where have you been? We've noticed you've missed some classes. This type of in-depth support is throughout this project. We've featured here Mary, Oliver, and Zach, but this is core to the coaching project. And I think there are parts of this that seem kind of intuitive, right? There's a person who's checking in on the student, helping them develop goals and explore careers. But all of this is supported by a curriculum that TBR staff have developed, and that curriculum is research-backed, informed by a great deal of evidence and science from everything from behavioral economics to social psychology. So the 10 coaches that are part of this project have been working with students since last fall. And we are now closely tracking the impact of this. We want to know, how do we know if this is working? How do we know if this is making a difference for students? To answer those questions, we have constructed this project as an experiment, as a rigorous experiment, a randomized trial. Students at Jackson and Northeast who met the eligibility criteria were randomly selected to receive a coach. That then allows us to compare outcomes for those students who were randomly selected to another similar group of students who received a more traditional advising experience. This comparison, this type of test, is considered the gold standard for evaluating the effectiveness of a student success intervention. This allows us to, with as much confidence as possible, connect any outcomes from coaching to the coaching model itself, rather than to some other thing going on at the college or in the students' lives. So with this experiment in progress, we can track a couple of metrics. For starters, we want to know how students have responded to the opportunity to meet with a coach. Students are not required to do this. It is optional. And when other states and other researchers have done similar projects, they've recognized that it's sometimes hard to get students to come in and sit down with a Mary or an Oliver or a Zach to have these conversations. And so in going into this project, we planned to track how many students are actually coming in and meeting with their coach. We call that engagement. We're able to see in real time how students are responding to this. And we planned at the outset that if we could get to around a third, half of students engaging, then we would consider that successful. That would be progress. That would be healthy. And instead, what we found is nearly double that. That among the recent high school graduates who started in this project last fall, 72% are regularly engaging with their coach. In January, we added a second wave of students, new and returning adults ages 23 and older, and they are also responding to this at higher rates than we honestly anticipated. We are also tracking early outcomes. What we really want to know is whether coaching impacts the outcomes that we really care about: student success, graduation, getting a job. But because this is early on, we're tracking some early indicators. Indicators of, is a student building momentum towards graduation and getting a job? And so we're able to compare things like fall to spring persistence for students who got a coach versus similar students who didn't have access to one of these coaches. Fall to spring persistence is the first of these early indicators and just measures how many of those students who started in the fall returned in the spring. At the outset of the project, we set a goal to increase fall to spring persistence by 5 percentage points because of coaching. Now, you may be asking yourself, why 5? Is that an ambitious number? Is that high? Is that low? Why 5? And as we've talked with the partner colleges involved with this, we've come to really understand how ambitious a 5-point increase really is. Over the last decade, community colleges in Tennessee and nationally have tried a lot of things to move this metric for this population of underprepared students. And unfortunately, most of those efforts haven't really changed much. This metric is notoriously hard to move. And so a 5 percentage point increase was ambitious. And as we thought about moving that metric for this group of students, we also knew we were fighting up against the one thing that has ever caused this number to move is that after the onset of the pandemic, fall to spring persistence for these students fell 11 percentage points. So 5 felt ambitious. And this is a new model. We didn't know that we would be able to achieve that goal right away. Maybe it would take a while for us to realize that outcome, work out the model. I am very happy to share with you today that the coaches and the students involved in this project met that goal in 1 semester. Using data from the first year of this project, we're able to see that students who were selected for coaching and who were part of this project persisted at that rate that was 5 percentage points higher than students who were not selected for coaching, meeting the goal we set for this project. Now that group you see in the red bar, those who were selected for coaching, some of those students we know engaged with their coach. They were meeting with Mary and Oliver and Zach. They were getting the benefit of this coaching, and some students weren't. So we can drill down within that red bar and break that group out a little bit and see the outcome for those who were selected for coaching and engaged with their coach and got the full benefit of this coaching model. And there we see that that group of students didn't persist at a rate that was 5 percentage points higher, but rather 15 percentage points higher. Now that group, we may say they were already engaging with their coach. They could be especially motivated already, and that happens to coincide with them meeting with their coach and succeeding. So we are cautious in interpreting those results, but still quite optimistic about what this means. We see similar outcomes in math. Once again, we set a goal to increase students' math success rates by 5 percentage points. And instead, we saw increases of 7 percentage points for students who were selected to be part of coaching and 13 percentage points for students who were both selected for coaching and who engaged with their coach. The takeaway here from all of this is that after the first year of this project, we are quite encouraged. We know there is still a lot to do to refine this model, to improve it, to ensure the sustainability, durability, and scalability of these results. But we are, with the appropriate cautions, quite optimistic. It is hard to find something that moves those metrics for these students. And we are very grateful to the teams at Jackson and Northeast who have helped us test this model. And so I want to conclude by acknowledging those excellent teams at the partner colleges. You see some of them here, this is not all of them. But this work is led by a team of coaches at Jackson State, led by Will Scholl, their Director of Advising, and at Northeast State, led by Kathy Coleman, their Dean of Advising and Retention. It is also supported by an outstanding team of TBR project staff, led by Dr. Madison Dell and Aaron Deli, who are both in the audience today and waving. It is through their hard work that we took these grant dollars and this idea and brought this to life. Next week, the project team, the coaches, and some of our partners will meet for the first coaching summit, a 2-day event where our goal will be to take these very encouraging results and try to do more, try to make it better, try to build on these positive results in year 2, because we will have a fresh wave of pilot students joining us in August. For anyone who's interested in learning more about this project or the coaching model, we have released, as of today, as of right now, an interactive report on the TBR website that provides a great deal more information about the model itself and those early results. And you should be seeing a preview of that report on your screen now. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the coaching project.
Yes, Dr. Shelton. Not
Soon to be
yet.
Dr. Shelton.
Not yet. Hopefully, she's going to be one of the deciders in that. So, I like that you used the word accountability in this. And as somebody who is kind of an early alert queen, because I send way too many of them, probably, I think one of the things that we hear back is from our success coaches is, students don't answer phone calls, they don't respond to emails. So this is kind of, and I hate to use this word, a form of intrusive advising. I'm going to call it momming because that's what I would do if I was one of these people. I'm your mommy. You're going to pay attention to me or I'm going to chase you down at Walmart. Do you think that may be part of why this is so successful? There's an expectation on both sides there?
It's a key ingredient. And a key part of that, what makes that possible, is those very small caseloads. It is hard to be intrusive and, to your example, track down every student at Walmart when you are responsible for 600 students, right? So those very small assigned caseloads are an incredibly important ingredient based on what we can see so far.
So, great presentation. I love this stuff. The ratio, I think you mentioned 7,000 across the colleges that were maybe in this unprepared category. And so we've got 150 times 10 now, 1,500 that are given this service, if you will. So there's a bunch left. And I think you kind of referred to this as an experiment. So then you're trying this out and then you'll come back to the others. But in this small group, how did you select those students? Because clearly the numbers play out that it's very different from the ones you selected and the ones you didn't.
Absolutely. So 2 important things here. One, this is conducted just as an experiment at these 2 colleges with small numbers so that we can test the model in this very rigorous way. So it is a small experiment, and I think that allows us to test it out. And a key to that small experiment is random selection. So at the outset of the project, we identified all of the underprepared students at the college who met those criteria, and we randomly selected almost just over half of them, so that the groups that are receiving coaching and those not receiving coaching are as similar as possible in every way. And we check to make sure they are as similar as possible in every way, so that when we see those outcomes, we can say that's not because this group was more motivated or this group was more prepared. We want those 2 groups to be random and as similar as possible to facilitate that rigorous comparison.
Fantastic. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm like, Nisha, I love this. And the constraint, the program's obviously going to be successful. It is successful. The constraint will be the coaches.
Right.
So I'm assuming in the future that's something you can expand using AI and putting mechanisms together so you can reach more students that way?
That's absolutely, the technology piece of this is incredibly important. It is very personnel heavy, right? Those coaches and their relationships with students are important, but they're using technology to try to facilitate that outreach to as many students, especially text messaging and making themselves available to meet with students in as a variety of ways, whatever that student needs.
Thank you. So first and foremost, congratulations. That's great to see such positive results and move such a sticky metric so early on. One quick question for you. I think this was mentioned. The coaches seem like the extremely important, linchpin piece in this. And I know you mentioned you have a summit coming up with them, but reflections from them about the experience on the coaching side, things to work on. I saw the caseload on there. Well, I know it's a lot better than what the normal is. 150 kids is still a lot. So any reflections that they've shared about the experience, about things that may be program tweaks moving forward?
Absolutely. The TBR project team that is here recently conducted in-depth interviews with each of the coaches to better understand their experience. Those coaches are a very creative group of people who care deeply about student success, so you won't be surprised that they have a lot of ideas about how to keep improving the project. And that will be the focus of the summit we have with them next week. A few examples that they've given is drawing closer connections between these coaches and faculty. Those connections are there and incredibly important, and the coaches are committed to building more trust and connection between them and the faculty teaching courses, so that when a student does miss an assignment or is struggling, the faculty member knows they can turn to that coach to help and be part of that team to surround that student. So faculty connections are key to that, and just making it easier for students to get to their coach and have meaningful conversations in whatever way possible.
I think we had, did I see Miles and Danny?
I was just, this is so wonderful. I've been a Tennessee Achieves coach for the last 8 years, I guess. Usually I have 6 to 10 students, and it is, I mean, just that small amount. Yeah. Trying to keep them corralled in and at least communicating with you is like, you know, it's unbelievably difficult for most people. But it's amazing that's the key, though, is once you can get through to them, it makes all the difference in the world, and that trust is built. And then on the other hand, it seems, I don't know if you see this, but sometimes the kids that don't interact initially, as soon as they're having a problem, all of a sudden they're calling, help, you know, that kind of stuff. Do you see that?
We absolutely see that, and are working with the coaches to say, you know, that student may not respond in August at the start of the semester when we're all full of optimism. They may think that they're okay, but you're going to hear from them in October after midterms, for example. So keeping that door open for the student to engage when they're ready.
I had a long list of comments and questions, but they've all been asked except one. Tennessee Achieves, the Bridge program. Is it working? Have any idea?
I can't speak to it. I know they've
Okay.
published a recent report as recently as maybe last week that shared some positive outcomes
Yeah.
from that, but I can't speak to the
Okay.
details. I wish I could.
Couple of things. So when you all choose someone to say, you know, we would like to put you in this program, do you get any pushback? Do you find, is there folks that decide not to show up? What impact is that? It's coming in and, for lack of a better term, getting in their space and saying, we want you to do these things.
Yeah, we see that from time to time, and we see that in two ways. So one, this is optional, and we give students, when they're first selected, we give them the option to say, I don't want to be part of this. And if they say that, that's okay. They go back to having a traditional advisor, which is still very high quality. We had very small opt-out rates, I think less than 2%. We had a handful of students say, I want more of a traditional experience, and that's okay. What's more often is that we see students who say, yeah, I'm in, and then don't respond to their coach, don't show up for meetings. So that engagement rate of 72%, the remaining 28% there are students who didn't show up, didn't meet. So we're thinking of ways to try to reach those students in ways that they can direct. Maybe they don't want to have to meet with a coach. Maybe they don't feel like they need that, but we still want to have support for them. So working with that student to allow the student some agency in how they meet with their coach is part of our year two goals.
How large was your sample size? I know you had 10 people, could do 150. Was it 1,500 people?
So it's just over 1,000, and part of that is because it's come in two different waves, first with recent high school grads and then with adults. When we are fully at scale, it will be 1,500 students or so.
One of the things that you mentioned was resources. What kind of resources are you providing to these students?
So the coaches are equipped to provide students with all kinds of links to campus and community resources. So when a student says, where do I go for help with X? That coach says, here's where you go, or here's an online career assessment you can take, or I'm going to walk you over to the tutoring center. And so part of that is making sure that the coaches are aware of all of the resources that are available in on the campus or just in that community.
Good discussion. Anybody else? Keep up the good work, and we'll hear more from you as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Moreland. Well done. Oh, round of applause. Dr. Reed, the accreditation summary report, I know everybody has read this in their materials. Could you give us some highlights? We do not have an action item on this, if I understand correctly.
Yes, I just want to highlight that the TCATs continually monitor and they're in compliance. with the Council on Occupational Education COE standards, and all our communications continually monitor and comply with the SEC CLC standards. All colleges are in compliance. This is an annual information report. Do we have any questions? Thank you, Regent. That concludes my.
Well done. That's an excellent report on all accounts. That's right. Not just because of the brevity, but because of the success of it all. So there we go. You guys, any further business for academic committee? Hearing none, we stand adjourned. Before I turn this over to Regent Powers for Committee on Personnel and Compensation, you're hearing some clouds bump around out there. We still have some very important business to complete this afternoon. I'm not sure if it's actually raining, but I think we're under, oh, there it goes. There it goes. So settle in. We can't walk it. We can't go out the door right now anyway. But remain engaged here for these next critical 30 to 45 minutes as we complete the important work of the Committee on Personnel and Compensation. Regent Powers, thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Before I get started, I just want to point out that Mariah gave us this list, which shows all the committee members. I just want to make sure everybody sees that so nobody votes or makes a motion on one of my committee items. It's not on my committee, just getting that out there. So thank you again. And I'm calling the Committee on Personnel and Compensation of the Tennessee Board of Regents to order. And I might have to speak up because of the rain. So yank this thing closer. All right. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Regent Burdine,
Here.
Regent Hooper, Chair Lady Powers,
Here.
Regent Varlin, and Regent White.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We will proceed with the first agenda item, which is with the consent agenda. As you recall, at the committee chairs meeting, we briefed on the following 3 policy items, and materials were provided on the website. Unless anyone has a question about an agenda item, we'll act on all 3 with 1 voice vote, and the items are TBR Policy 6.04.00.00, Pregnancy, Childbirth, and Related Conditions, a request to approve the new policy. TBR Policy 5.0.01.07, Parental Leave, a request to approve the proposed revisions. TBR Policy 5.01.01.14, Family Medical and Service Member Leave, a request to approve the proposed revisions. Any questions? Hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll
That was from Regent Hooper, and second.
Second.
Regent Burdine beat you. But thank you. I'll hold
He can
it for
have it,
next
it's okay.
time. Rain check. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry, was there discussion? Was there someone, I just saw Regent Marlin look at me like she had something to say. I'm so sorry. Okay, just looking at me. Awesome. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you so much. Next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from the special call meeting on May 31st, 2023. Does anyone have any questions or corrections to the minutes? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move for their approval.
Thank you, Regent White. Second.
Second.
Regent Hooper, thank you so much. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Regent Burdine,
Aye.
Regent Hooper,
Aye.
Chair Lady Powers,
Aye.
Regent Varlin, and Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, ma'am. Next item on the agenda is President Emeriti contracts. And I will call on Council Brian Lapps for the recommended proposals.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, you are being asked to approve the renewal of the annual appointments for the 6 Emeriti presidents in your materials. As a reminder, only presidents who began service as presidents prior to 2002 are eligible for compensation as part of the emeritus, meaning there are no more eligible presidents other than these 6 before you. Going forward, the title is only an honorific. Each of the emeriti in your materials has submitted a report detailing his or her work on behalf of the college for fiscal year 23. For fiscal year 2024, each has met with the sitting president. The president has recommended the renewal and found their assistance valuable. They've agreed to the duties that will be performed in fiscal year 2024. The rate of pay is determined by the system office. Thus, the statutory prerequisites for your approval have all been met.
That it?
And that's it, unless
Okay.
you have any questions.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. And may I have a second? Thank you. That was Hooper and Varlin. And Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Regent Burdine,
Aye.
Regent Hooper,
Aye.
Chair Lady Powers,
Aye.
Regent Varlin, and Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you so much. The next item on the agenda is faculty emeriti.
Is it possible to take agenda items 4, 5, and 6 together?
Yes, ma'am.
You all have received materials from the Office of Academic Affairs for faculty emeriti, for our promotion recommendations for the TCATs, and our promotion and tenure recommendations for community colleges. We recommend approval of all 3 agenda items, and that concludes my report.
Well, how beautifully done. Twice in a row. Congratulations. So now let me find my place. So I think I'll need a motion for that if there are no
Motion
questions.
to approve 4, 5, and 6 all together.
Thank you. And I need, thank you.
Thank you. That concludes my reports.
Thank you so much. Are we going to do a voice? I'm sorry. Okay. So are there any questions or any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you so much. The next item on the agenda, and that's number 6 of 12, so hang with me. Tenure and promotions. Oh, right? No, we skipped those. We're not doing, we did 4, 5, and 6, correct?
Yes.
So 7, review and approval of faculty promotional increases. Is that right? Dr. Alicia Fox, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. That's where we are, and I'll try to be brief as well. So today, I'm just bringing forward the dollar amounts associated with the faculty promotions that Dr. Reed just presented to you. So in summary, the community college increases total $406,540 for the 156 promotions, and the TCAT increases are $146,967 for the 32 promotions. This has all been included in your material, and staff has verified the proposed ranks and recommends these for approval.
Well done. Chair entertains a motion.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Regent Hooper. And a second.
Oh.
Thank you, Regent White. And this will be a roll call vote. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Regent Burdine,
Aye.
Regent Hooper,
Aye.
Chair Lady Powers,
Aye.
Regent Varlin, Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 8, executive incentive payments, and I call you back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are covering executive incentive payments at this time. You should have received these individual incentive payments in your materials that you received ahead of this meeting. But just as a reminder, the incentive plan was approved in June 23 at the request of board members to address gaps between the average market salaries for presidents and the chancellor. Again, you have the list in front of you in your materials, and note that the only eligible participants in the plan are presidents of the community colleges, the TCAT presidents, as well as the chancellor. I am only bringing to you in your materials, you will only see today the recommendations for the community colleges and for the chancellor, as the TCAT information, COE, the Council on Occupational Education, did not have the data available that we need to calculate the TCAT presidents. So I'll be bringing those back to you in September. So today you just have the community college and chancellor in front of you. Again, those amounts are in front of you. We have reviewed these and recommend these for approval.
Thank you, Dr. Fox. Any questions? Hey, bring it, okay. Regent
Motion,
Hooper, thank
motion
you.
to approve.
Second? Second. Thank you, Regent White. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Regent Burdine.
Aye.
Regent Hooper.
Aye.
Chair Lady Powers.
Aye.
Regent Barlin. And Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And the next item is institutional request for amended compensation plans, and we have Dr. Fox.
That's me, all the rest of the day.
Right.
And I'll be much briefer this time. So, Madam Chairman, in accordance with TBR guideline P.043, we are required to bring forward any, institutions will bring forward any adjustments to their compensation plans for approval by this board. Please be reminded today, you're only approving the revision to the plan and its methodology. Any payments on the plan would come before you in future board meetings. So today, these are only revisions. You have these in your materials. We had Nashville State Community College, Volunteer State Community College, and Northeast State Community College, all bringing minor revisions just to change, either updating their minimum starting wages or updating their target salaries and pools to be more competitive with market ranges. This is all based on conversations with our compensation consultants. And again, these have been reviewed by our staff and are recommended for approval today.
Thank you.
Motion to approve.
I'm going to just quit talking when she's finished and just wait for you. We got this. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Regent White. And any discussion? Hearing none, we will have a roll call vote. Madam Secretary?
Regent Burdine.
Aye.
Regent Hooper.
Aye.
Chair Lady Powers.
Aye.
Regent Barlin. And Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, ma'am. Next item on the agenda is 10, and that is institutional requests for compensation plan payments from the state salary increase pool. And it's Dr. Fox again.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Again, just to provide a little bit of background information, as you know, on May 31st, we had the special called session, and during that session of the Personnel and Comp, you approved the methodology that schools could use for implementing their salary pool. So as a reminder, we had a 5% required salary pool as state of Tennessee requirement, and we recommended that 3%, all schools do 3% across the board, and then flexibility on that other 2%. Again, thank you, committee, for approving this methodology. The majority of our institutions submitted additional across the board for that 2%. For the ones that did not, they were required to submit those plans to us for review, and then I'm presenting those to today. You will see those on the screen. We had just a few, we had 4 institutions, again, outlined in your materials, but Jackson State, Nashville State, Roane State, and Southwest all wanted to make adjustments to their compensation plan rather than do another 2% across the board. And they have varying measures of how much they're putting towards across the board versus comp plan. But you will see Jackson and Roane are putting 2% towards their compensation plan, their full 2%. Nashville State is using 1.5% for an additional across the board and 0.5 toward comp plan. Southwest is doing 0.5 across the board and 1.5 towards their compensation plan. Again, on the screen and provided in your materials, I'll be happy to answer questions, but we recommend these for approval today.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Regent White. And we'll do a roll call vote. Madam Secretary?
Regent Burdine.
Aye.
Regent Hooper.
Aye.
Chair Lady Powers.
Aye.
Regent Barlin. And Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll do it 2 more times, okay? Number 11, the evaluation of the chancellor. Are you okay? Okay. Pursuant to the board policy, a performance review of the chancellor is required every 2 years. Additionally, pursuant to the policy, the vice chair assigned to the Committee on Personnel and Compensation the task of conducting this review and reporting to the board. To facilitate this work, the vice chair and I took the steps outlined in the memo in our material. Also included in our material were the competency ratings and comments received. A high degree of satisfaction in the chancellor's abilities and support for her leadership from a broad spectrum of constituencies is indicated by number 1, the positive ratings and comments provided. Number 2, a careful review of the chancellor's self-assessment. And number 3, as well as the quality and quantity of her accomplishments. In summary, I find that Chancellor Tiding's overall performance exceeds requirements for this period, and she is deserving of high praise. Is there any discussion other than me saying congratulations? We're so proud of you.
I have one thing.
Yes.
Woman of the Year.
Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone else?
When there was any compensation with Woman of the Year, I mean, I think we ought to get a rebate if there is.
Ooh. Spoken truly like Mark Gill. If there's no discussion, I make a motion to approve the Chancellor's evaluation and categorize her performance as exceeds requirements. I call for a second.
Second.
Thank you. And we'll have a roll call vote. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Regent Burdine.
Aye.
Regent Hooper.
Aye.
Chair Lady Powers.
Aye.
Regent Barlin. And Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Yay! She did it. I think that's the only time we got claps from the audience, so that's impressive. Next and final item on the agenda for the whole meeting, I think, is number 12, request for Chancellor Compensation Plan payment. And I call on Dr. Fox.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So in accordance with the board-approved compensation plan at the March 2022 board meeting that included the Chancellor's salary, it was recommended that the Chancellor receive 50% of the increase last year and the remaining 50% be brought to the board this year for approval. So today we're bringing for your approval a salary adjustment request for the Chancellor to her base salary of $28,480. This increase will assist in keeping the pay for the Chancellor competitive and be effective July 1, 2023. It will be provided prior to an across-the-board increase that is approved. Staff is recommending this for the board's approval of the compensation increase as outlined.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Regent Hooper. And a second from, thank you very much, Regent Marlin. And on this one, I will also need a roll call vote. So Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Regent Burdine.
Aye.
Regent Hooper.
Aye.
Chair Lady Powers.
Aye.
Regent Barlin. And Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any further business to come before this committee? Hearing none. The Committee on Personnel and Compensation for the Tennessee Board of Regents stands adjourned. Thank you.
Way to go. Got us back on track time-wise. Oh, thank you all for a great afternoon. We got through, obviously, a lot of business, but we had some very good discussion in some of these reports. Regent Powers, thanks for your leadership with this committee, particularly with regard to the Chancellor's evaluation. It's been a pleasure. You guys, before we go, for our committee chairs, just a reminder that your committee reports and any materials for tomorrow's meeting will be available on the TBR website later this evening. And a copy of your committee reports will be at the front desk in the hotel when we return from dinner tonight. We start tomorrow morning right here at 9 o'clock with a presentation from President Ashford and Executive Vice President Jim Barrett. And then, of course, we slide into our full board meeting immediately following around 9:30. Chancellor Rebecca Mariah, announcements for tonight.
I don't have any announcements for tonight, but I would be remiss if I did not thank each and every one of you that filled out one of those evaluation forms on me. Your comments and your support means more than you know, so thank you very much for the comments and the generous evaluation that you gave to me this year, so thank you.
Can I have your drink ticket tonight?
Yes. Yes, you may.
I don't drink, so you're good.
Well, thank you all. So I'm very excited about this evening. So we will now be transitioning to the hotels, our 3 hotels downtown. There is transportation. We do have transportation downtown in case anyone needs it. And then also we will have transportation in case anyone needs transportation from their hotel to the aquarium. Let me or Lisa Summy know. Lisa is in the back waving her hand. Let us know if you need transportation from your hotel to the aquarium. When I walked back into the auditorium, it was raining. That doesn't mean it's going to be raining in just a little while, but you never know. We do have umbrellas for all of the regents, should you need those. The hotel that is furthest from the aquarium is about 0.3 mile, so it's not very far. All the hotels are very close. We will have a hospitality room set up before the reception at the aquarium. Reception at the aquarium starts at 6, dinner is at 7. Prior to that, if you'd like a refreshment, we will have a hospitality room in the courtyard by Marriott on the first floor. I believe that's where the room is. And then during the reception at the aquarium, I'm excited to share that you will be able to walk through an exhibit where there will be some animals. And you are allowed to take your beverages with you if you should have a beverage with you. And then after the dinner this evening, the hospitality room will still be available till about 10:30. Any questions for me? Again, just let me or Lisa know if anyone needs transportation either to their hotel or from the hotel to the aquarium. I think Regent Barlin's planning on running off with that little red, white, and blue Volkswagen bug.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are.
It's so cute.
It is so cute.
Thank you, Dr. Ashford. Thank you so much.
Thank
We
you so much
appreciate
for
it.
everything
Oh,
this
thank
afternoon.
you. So it's been a great afternoon. All right, everybody. Most importantly, as we skirt the weather here, just be safe heading back to the hotel.
I do want to add, I apologize, one more thing.
Oh,
In case we don't have it printed, and we will have lots of greeters out available in front of the aquarium. We're in the River Journey exhibit because there are 2 buildings. Make sure you go to River Journey.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And as I was saying, most importantly, as we skirt this storm, just be safe as you head back. In keeping with the theme of the day, I'm not exactly sure of the direction from here, but we are eastbound and down. We are adjourned for the day. Thank you all.